Hi guys, how's it going? We're doing a little stream here. Let me edit the title real quick. Hold on, everyone. We're just... Yeah, that'll work. Yes! Good! NastyNathanial is sending people. That's what I like to see. Because I didn't advertise this at all. I've been a little busy doing a little stuff. You may notice that I'm not in my normal area. This is not a green screen. This is a room. This is a hotel room, in fact. My camera looks like garbage because, one, my good camera was stolen, and two, this is a computer, a laptop webcam, which is trash. So, I mean, it gets the job done, but it is trash. So, he's been asking to do the stream for ages, and I keep being like, no, I don't have time, I can't, I'm so sorry. I feel really bad about it because we've done a live stream before, and it was a lot of fun. And I've been wanting to do another one, and he had a topic in mind that is a really good topic to talk about, which is Jeremy Dewitt's passport shenanigans in 2003. And someone just left a comment literally within the last few minutes on my channel about it, which, what excellent timing. So if you're that person, congratulations, we get to talk about it. So, I don't know if NastyNathanial is here. If he is, gotta say hi in the chat, and I'll see if I can figure out if I still have your phone number hanging around here. Someone, oh yeah, I haven't worn this one in a while, and that's because it has a little bit of green on it, so it does terrible things with my green screen, which is already difficult enough. Because first of all, my green screen is actually pretty good. It's just that I don't have much room for it, so I have to sit right next to it, and there's a little bit of bleed from that color onto my skin, which is why my green screen looks so terrible. But I'm working on building a studio so that I can be a little farther from my green screen and not have that issue in getting a decent quality camera, so it's not a problem at all. I know what the problem is, I know how to fix it, I just can't at the moment. So, yeah, the beard. So, I grew out a beard for No Shave November, and I blame the National Guard for this a little bit. Because of COVID, there was recent outbreaks in Washington State, and so they're like, we're not going to meet in person. We're going to do it over, Zoom or Skype or whatever. And because I don't have to be in uniform in formation, I don't have to shave. So I haven't had to shave for probably longer than I've ever been able to not shave in 7 or 8 years. I've never had a beard this long. This is the longest folks. You're seeing it here now. It is getting too long for my liking. I do not like it this long. I like it a little short would be nice. But you know. Yeah, this hotel is not... There's light back there that's really bright, but then it makes the background really bright and this part really dark. And the plugs over there aren't great. They aren't, it isn't a good distance. So, I'm gonna see if I can get... our boy NastyNathanial up in Mya. Alright. The stream is up. Probably should have coordinated with him. But I was looking through the case, this passport case, which I had gone through before, but not in any great depth, because it wasn't related to his current problems. And I was looking through it today and trying to fact check some stuff on Jeremy Dewitt case, and I found some things that appear to be big inaccuracies. So instead of being like, all right, let's get ready for this stream, I was digging into things like, this doesn't make sense. What is this? These numbers are wrong. These dates are wrong. This person doesn't appear to have been charged like they said he was. Now, I don't trust most of what comes from the whole Jeremy Dewitt case thing. I don't really trust anything that I can't independently verify. So people who are telling me you need to look at the that audio recording of the alleged victim of Jeremy's sexual assault, lewd and lascivious battery, I can't confirm that that is true because the court records are sealed. So, I mean, for all I know, that could be just some random recording submitted as if it was true, and maybe it's not, which is why I haven't talked about it. There are people that want me to talk about various other things that are found in various other places that I can't independently verify. And I don't like to talk about things unless I can independently verify them. So, that's one of the reasons where I was. Sorry, I just got distracted. Got it. Okay, I have his number. And we're going to call him. And I'm going to put these headphones in, which I got on sale on Target. So if you're looking for cheap headphones, Target, please sponsor me. All right. Let's see. I want to make sure. All right. Things are happening. Okay. I don't know if you guys can hear it.
Hey, it's Blue Bacon, the legend.
It is. How's it going?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well as well. Doing a little bit of traveling in the recent days for work. So I'm not at my computer with all my stuff. So we're going to see how this goes. But other than that, things are pretty good.
Yeah, I figured you were out of the area when you mentioned 6 p.m. Eastern time. I was thinking like, oh, maybe
yes,
somewhere on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's I'm in the sort of more eastern side of the country right now, and I'm not a huge fan of that because I don't like the idea of traveling with COVID being such a thing, but it was required for work, so here I am. Rennie, your question about the stream title, I did change the stream title. It might just need a refresh. I'll fix it afterwards if not. But yeah, you want to talk about the whole passport shenanigans.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there really isn't a whole lot of information online about it. I mean, there is an article, or I don't know if you want to call it an article, a piece about it on the Jeremy Dewitt,
yes.
Like it's professional, but the
yes.
Jeremy Dewitt case.com under the chapter The Fugitive.
Yes.
And I've read it, and there's a YouTube video which basically the guy just reads from the website, so it's nothing really updated. But the website, one of the things that I found really interesting about it is that it doesn't explain why Jeremy Dewitt felt that he needed to get a passport in somebody else's name. And that's something that I've always wondered about. Well, why didn't he just go apply for a passport? Now, the website, and this is what I think, this is my theory, the website does make mention of the fact that, blah, 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 in 2003 or whatever, Jeremy became a convicted felon. And it's trying to hint to the fact that, maybe because he's a convicted felon, for some reason he couldn't get a passport. And I don't know if you've ever come across this, Bacon, but there are so many people out there that are under the belief that if you are a convicted felon, that for some reason you can't get a passport. And that is absolutely 100% false. You can get a passport with a felony conviction. It will not hinder your ability to travel abroad. But so many people believe that. I don't know where they get this information from. Registered sex offenders can get passports.
Yeah. And at this point, he wasn't a registered sex offender, not for another 2 years.
Exactly. Yes, and so my kind of theory on this, and I kind of want to see what you think, is that my belief is this. I mean, obviously, I don't know the guy personally. I mean, I would say you know more than I do because you've actually spoken with him. But
yeah, I have.
All the information,
more than the average person who's dealt with this outside of Florida. I feel like I've been fortunate to have that opportunity. It wasn't a lengthy opportunity by any means. He stopped talking to me after I started saying, hey, maybe we should talk about your allegations of your claims of military service, which he made which we found out about after that interview. So for the folks who were like, why didn't you ask him about that? Well, I didn't know about it at the time. It hadn't come out yet. So just throwing it out there. But yeah, no, you bring up a good point though. Is there should have been no reason why he wouldn't be able to fly with his own passport, unless there was some condition of some previous, something or other that happened. But I can't really see that being the case without information that really directly implicates or implies that would be the reason.
Well, my guess on it is that, and I think this very well could possibly be the case, is that because, well, first of all, I'll say this, like I mentioned, obviously you probably know Jeremy Dewitt better than any of us, outside of his inner circle in Florida, because you've actually had some interactions with him, you've interviewed him, so forth. But from what I've gathered, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree, Jeremy Dewitt doesn't seem like he's all that bright. I mean, I know he owns a business, and, a lot of people think, oh, if somebody owns a business, they must be this super intelligent. I mean, I found that not to be the case. I mean, I've known people that have owned businesses. I mean, I knew one guy that owned a gas station in Hawaii, and that guy was dumber than a box of rocks. I mean, he was always in trouble with his finances and just, I mean, I guess he came into money or whatever, but I don't think Jeremy Dewitt's all that bright. And my guess is that somebody probably told him, oh, well, you're a convicted felon now. You're not going to be able to get a passport. And then, like I've already mentioned, that's completely bogus.
Yeah.
And he probably believed it.
Jeremy, I don't subscribe to the idea that he's dumb. I think there are certain things that he's very good at. And within certain areas, he's very intelligent. I think a lot of his problems lie with poor decision-making, his repeated declination to seek outside help when it comes to decision-making. I don't think he surrounds himself with a group of people who are a great influence. And then I think there's just this failure to predict and understand and account for consequences of his actions. And to me, that doesn't indicate a lack of intelligence, although I can certainly see when you look at his criminal record and his history of everything. I think that maybe he grew up in an environment that didn't require him to build those skills of, that sort of critical thinking. I think that's part of the problem. That would be my guess. And I'm not, qualified to make that determination by any means at like a medical level. The chat is saying that he was on parole at the time, and that's why he would not have been able to travel. Which would make sense. If his parole prohibited him from leaving the United States, then yes, he would have needed an ID that was, would have allowed him to do that.
Well, what's funny is I actually have a rebuttal to this, and I don't know if you're aware of it. I mean, it's definitely out there in the First Amendment community, but I myself am a convicted felon.
Okay.
I have served time in state prison. I actually, and I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but somebody in the chat said, well, he was on parole at the time, so he probably couldn't get one because of his parole conditions, and that's a really good point. But I'll say this: I actually, when I discharged parole, I mean, this was years ago, but I flew to the Philippines 4 days after I got off parole, and I actually applied for and got my passport while I was still on parole. So
you just didn't realize that was an option.
That up.
Yeah.
And then that's another reason why I just don't see why and I just want everybody to know, I mean, what happened to me was nearly 20 years ago. I'm not proud of it. It's an interesting case, actually. I could send you some of the
oh, sure. I mean, it'd be fun.
We could even do a live stream about that if you wanted.
Sure. I mean, that sounds like a good time. And I generally don't hold people's, and this is, I mean, there are exceptions to this rule. I generally don't hold people's criminal past against them. I don't say like, oh, you did this and that's forever, that's a problem. The whole point of imprisonment is fulfilling your duty to society, rehabilitation. And I know there are prisons out there where that is not the goal. I know that the private prison industry as a whole isn't very conducive to that. I firmly believe that we need to fix that and make it more about rehabilitation. And once you're rehabilitated and the issue is corrected, great, congratulations. Why would that be a problem? unless it is a continued problem. And within the First Amendment auditing community, I firmly have that belief, like, look, if you mess up, but you're willing to accept help, if you're willing to accept information about the situation and sort of address it and correct it, great. I want to help you, because First Amendment audits are, when done correctly, absolutely lawful, and they're not necessarily a bad idea, depending on, you know, the whole intent behind it. But if you're not willing to learn how to do them correctly, because there are a lot of little tiny details about the First Amendment and, you know, the case law and how it works and what the exceptions can be, if you're not willing to learn, things are just going to keep happening. And with Jeremy Dewitt, when this first started, I reached out to I was in contact with Alec Ringdahl, and
Alec
working
Ringdahl
together. And so while Jeremy was figuring that, Alec sort of took charge of the company, and Alec and I were having a lot of conversations about, here's what should happen. You need to slow down the funeral procession. This is what you need to put on the side of the bike. This is how you need to run this. When people do get in the way and they do get into your funeral procession, you need to give them a warning, but don't give them orders. Call the police and have the police remove them, because the police actually have the authority. And Alec was kind enough to make a video showing him doing exactly that. And there were edits, so it's possible he just edited out the things where he was doing the wrong thing. But it certainly indicated that he knew what to do and what was technically correct. And he posted that, and I was like, wow, that looks great. And then everyone on the internet just, you know, threw dirt at him and went, oh, we hate you because of your association with Metro State. At which point he turned back to Jeremy, unfortunately, which is a great sort of teaching moment as to why you have to try to be a little impartial and look at things objectively. Because in this case, when Alec was starting to do the right thing and turning this company around, there was such a negative backlash simply because of the association with Metro State that he ended up just going back to doing the wrong thing. Because why wouldn't he, when doing the right thing was so much more emotionally damaging to him?
No, absolutely, I agree with you. You know, the issue that I had with Alec Ringdahl, and I'll make it clear. I mean, I've never spoken with him on the phone or anything. You know, it's all just been online, and that's been very brief. But from what I've observed from Alec Ringdahl, the problem I have with him, he seems like he kind of plays both sides.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
When he was with Metro State, he was all about, you know, helping the company and kind of, you know, defending Jeremy and so forth. And then all of a sudden they have their big falling out. And now all of a sudden he wants to be a part of the Jeremy Dewitt fan club group.
Yes.
And you know, so I kind of had the attitude of, well, I don't know. You might have to take what he says with a grain of salt.
And I do.
Like he's kind of flip-flopping.
Absolutely, I do, but I sincerely believe that the flip-flop was due to just people bashing him, and he went, why would I even bother then at that point if they're going to be like that? And that's a pretty common thing is I've, in the past on my channel, taken a stance that I didn't want to take just because people were so negative about something that I was defending. Even when they brought up good points, I was like, no, screw you. Like, I don't want to agree with your points. I'm going to find a reason why you're wrong. And that I've learned from that, because I looked at that and I went, what am I doing? Right? Once I had calmed down, like that's not at all the stance I want to take. And now I look like an idiot. Although maybe I'm technically right, maybe it's morally wrong, this thing I'm defending. And it was all because of the way that people were interacting with me and how sort of aggressive and negative they were. And I think that definitely had an effect on Alec. And I'm not trying to defend what he's done, but I do want to, you know, if anyone wants to conduct an activity lawfully and they're not sure how to do that, I'm happy to be of assistance. And that's how we started interacting, because he did reach out and say, hey, how can we fix this? And then he went back, and then he flipped again. And so there's this whole thing. There's a lot about the whole Jeremy Dewitt stuff that I don't trust. The Jeremy Dewitt case website, I don't trust. Alec, take it with a grain of salt. Jeremy Dewitt, I know a lot of what comes out of his mouth, I absolutely will not take at face value. When I was talking to Chance Scholl, the Department of Homeland Security federal officer, he emailed me and he was like, hey, I want you to take your video down about me. And I was like, well, I don't know why, you know. And I was polite, and he's like, I need it down because it's you know, I'm a semi-covert whatever. And I was like, bro, I used to be semi-covert. Your online presence, your Facebook, your everything is not. No, if you're concerned about being semi-covert, you're doing it wrong. You're just mad that you're being called out right now and it's upsetting. And of course, it's upsetting. And so I didn't trust what he said. He was like, "Oh, Jeremy was I knew that he was a bad guy." Well, we have you on video saying that you were willing to write a character statement saying that he was a good guy. So, what are you talking about? And I called him out because I didn't believe him. But he did end up giving me information, whether he meant to or not, that was excellent for a new video on Jeremy Dewitt regarding things that he has not been charged with, but the charges may be pending. It's a whole thing. I won't go into it because I don't want to ruin the video for all of you. But you're absolutely right to take basically anyone with a grain of salt.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, I think too, just reading from what I know about Alec Ringdahl, his living situation, he seems like he's kind of in an unstable. I mean, what was he sleeping sleeping in a sleeping mag in the Metro State office or something? I mean, I'm not trying to clown the guy. I'm just, there's obviously some things going on with him. So
yeah, I think that's contributing to it as well. If he doesn't have a stable situation. And Metro State's offering him the stablest situation available. He might make certain choices for his own, personal health and well-being that may be not the best long-term choice, but he might not have anything else available to him. There are a lot of factors that you need to take into this with all the people involved and the history of it. Like with Jeremy, for example, if you look at this situation from just the last year, you're not getting the full picture. If you look at the situation from the last 8 years to 10 years, even 20 years, you're getting a much more accurate story of the why and the mental sort of formation of him believing what he's doing is right. And you can sort of track the progression of why he acts like he does and why he believes what he's doing is so correct. You really got to look at the full picture here.
Yeah, and that's what I found so fascinating about the website when I started. It was like reading a good true crime novel. It was just going through but then I started to get really discouraged when I started hearing that it was put together by that girl that he was involved with, and then they got back on good terms and how he was involved with it. I'm thinking, well, who knows what is factual and what's not,
Yeah, at first it seemed pretty trustworthy, but we didn't know who was making it, so there were still some questions. And then, the story started coming out. And I don't know if this is true, so I've been hesitant to spread these claims, but they're making false claims about me, so now I'm like, it's kind of fair, isn't it? The claim is that Jennifer, his ex, who is now not his ex, who is the defendant in the recent domestic violence case that was dismissed and might end up just being a regular violence case, they're back together. Jeremy's apparently paying her rent, and as long as he pays her rent, she says nice things about him on the internet. Those are the claims. Whether or not they're true, unclear. But a lot of people seem to believe that this is absolutely the case, including former or current members of Metro State. But
interesting.
Yeah, but whether or not they can be believed, or they're trying to jump ship and sort of slowly push themselves away from the whole situation. There are a lot of reasons that they would have to lie to protect themselves at the moment. So I'm being real cautious about the information I'm receiving.
Yeah, exactly. How do you balance out what you think is true and what probably is true and what's bullshit? And yeah, it's frustrating. I think, and I'm probably stating the obvious by saying this, but I think it's gotten to the point right now that with Jeremy Dewitt that I think he is just so far in this legal hole. I don't think there's really any coming back as far as his ties with Metro State or his running Metro State.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much. I don't know what's going to happen to the company. I know, like we talked about in the past, maybe they're going to have to, do a, change the name and like rebrand the whole thing. But I think I watched that. It was the most recent arraignment, I believe. It was where he was in not Orange County, but the neighboring county, Osceola, or I don't know.
I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Yeah, and he just, I mean, you look at him, and I mean, he had a mask on, but still, he just seemed like he was so drained.
Yeah, I mean that's the first time I was joking with someone. Whether it's not really an appropriate joke because I try to be impartial. I was joking with someone that he had tape over his mouth that Amir had put there, and he only said anything because he'd managed to lick it off his face. You know, he gotten it wet enough to.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not. And the poor, it doesn't. Poor guy is in trouble. He kind of did it to himself, though. There are a lot of problems with what he did. He ran this business without knowing he was doing. If you look at the business filings of the registration of the company, there's a lot of weird stuff in there, misspellings of the name that seemed to indicate that he was trying to file it under a name that sounded like his but wasn't. And there is certain case law that establishes, on legal documents, if your name is spelled wrong by the government, it still is you as long as it sounds similar enough. There's a whole thing, and I've used that against sovereign citizens who like to spell their name wrong so that supposedly legal documents don't count. But if it can be established that he was spelling his name wrong to prevent people from being able to search his name as a sex offender and find the company he was associated with, that would be a fraudulent filing of government documents. His insurance issues, I think he used Progressive, maybe. I don't remember what it was, but allegedly, and I never checked this, the company does not insure vehicles that are used for work, and his vehicles are absolutely work vehicles. So he basically lied to the insurance company about what he was insuring the vehicles for, but it was insured under his wife's name, I would imagine, because it was cheaper to do so, since his wife is not, as far as I know, a repeat felon. He's a lot of strange things with his business stuff, and I think it's just because he had no one to teach him how to do it, and he sort of did it on his own, and that's a problem. So if anything comes out of this, I think some charges will be dropped. I think the charges about his unlawful use of lights are going to be dropped. I think a lot of the bigger ones are going to stick, but I think one of the things that might come out of this is the state might update the Florida funeral statute and make it more like a private investigator type thing. Like in Washington State, to be a private investigator, to run your own private investigator business, you have to have had a private investigator license under a different company for, I think, 3 years. I'd like to see something
that's interesting.
happen, right? So you have to know how the business should be run. You have to have experience with the business before you can run that business. I'd like to see something similar come out of this, where the state says, look, our statute is outdated. That's something Amir even has brought up in the past, where he's like, they still talk about rotating lights. Nobody uses those anymore. He has brought that up at some point somewhere. And so I think it is due for an update to clarify a few things. I would personally love to have one of the updates be, you need to work for a funeral escort company, a licensed, registered funeral escort company, for a certain amount of time before you can operate your own. Because one of the biggest problems Jeremy ran into was he tried to operate his own, and he created a system that worked for him, but the system he created does not work within the law.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems too is that he was able to do, that's a good point that you bring up about how he created a system that worked for him, and it worked for him for a decade, and that's one of the things that, you continuously hear him, bring up when he's on one of his rants. He's like, I've been running this company for 10 years, like, why all of a sudden now? Well, you got caught, that one sergeant, or I think it was a corporal, said, Vildemir or whatnot, you poked the bear one too many times.
Yeah, I mean, they had him in 2016 too, and eventually they sort of figured something out with him, and I believe, they probably had a meeting where they all sat down and said, look, the service you provide to the communities that you provide it to is important, and we're glad that you're doing it. We want to work with you to make sure it's done correctly, so we're going to sort of put these charges sort of, on the back seat. We're going to sort of try to work with you here. And they made a lot of great progress, and then Jeremy, a few years later, was back to his old tricks. And so now I think the police department, with their new chief of police or their sheriff or whatever they have, is like, no, he doesn't get a second chance. Right? The old chief was willing to work with him, but no, he proved that he's not willing to work with us. So sorry, bud. And they're going hard on him.
Yeah, no, absolutely they are. I mean, I think it just, and I think, you know, he just had it in his mind that he did it this way for so long.
Yeah.
That, and now all of a sudden everything's just, you know, like he, you know, like he built this big, you know, domino tower, and somebody pulled one of the pegs, and now it's all just coming down, you know. And I think I think he's too, and not only just that too, but while he's been out on bond, and this is another thing that, you know, I don't know how the Florida legal system works compared to, you know, the California judicial system, but I'm surprised that he's continuously been able to bond out. And I don't mean being able to, like, afford it. I mean, obviously, I guess he can afford it. But I'm surprised that they haven't either completely revoked bond, period, or have set a bond that's so high that there's no way he can make it. Because I know, like, in California, for example, and I'm not trying to sound like a lawyer, but in California, if you commit a crime, not just a felony, but if you commit a crime while out on bond, that's a separate charge or an enhancement that you can actually get more time for, you know, for committing a new offense while on bond. So I you know, again, I don't know how it works in Florida, but I'm just surprised that he continues to get arrested and pick up, you know, stuff while he's out on bond. I'm surprised that they haven't just completely said, all right, you know what, we're going to revoke bond on all the previous cases, you're remanded to custody, blah, blah.
Well,
I don't know how he continues to stay out.
According to chat, they cannot set the bond any higher than they have, according to the DA, district attorney. Now, as far as being like, no, you don't get any bond at all, I know the state's been like, we don't want him to get bond, and there's been some sort of back and forth. Part of the reason that he hasn't gotten in trouble for committing the same infractions because the first charge happened in whenever it happened, like for life, was it late 2019? I want to say that's when his first arrest and his body cam footage was discovered, and then he got charged for a whole bunch of things that he discovered on the body cam. Now he can't have his bond revoked for things that happened prior to his initial bond, I think was the argument made. So there are a lot of weird technicalities regarding why they haven't just been like, nope, no bond. Someone else in the chat says that it's COVID that's making them pretty lenient about this, which is understandable. There's a lot of weird things happening with jails and imprisonment due to COVID. There are people being released that wouldn't have otherwise. There are people that are not ending up in jail that would have otherwise. It's a whole thing. It's getting kind of weird as far as the sort of jail stuff goes. I'm not terribly experienced in cage kicking is what we call it in the Army. Corrections, that's the word. I'm not terribly familiar with the whole corrections process, so I can't give too much information about that, unfortunately, just due to the fact that I don't know. But, I mean, that seems like a legitimate theory.
That's actually an interesting point. That could have something to do with it too.
Yeah.
You know, you know, Orlando is that's a pretty big, you know, metropolitan area. You know, and I'm sure they definitely had their fair share of cases.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's in it. Whoever brought that up in the chat.
Yeah, I was
That's
watching
interesting,
the hearing where he goes and they explain the charges to him and set the bond hearing. And I was watching all the people around him. It's like, all right, domestic violence, felony level, like assault with aggravated whatever. And then he comes in, it's just, failure to register a temporary address or whatever it was. And it's like, oh, they're dealing with some bigger fish in Orlando. So I think absolutely the idea that that they have more important things to deal with than thing.
Yeah. Well, that's actually how I found out about the passport fraud case, was that at one of his, God, he's had so many, in Orange County, at one of his hearings, the deputy prosecutor, one of her reasons for wanting bond revoked, she brought up the fact that he had a conviction in U.S. District Court, federal court, for passport fraud. And I was like, whoa, what's this,
Yeah.
So... that in itself, I mean, the fact that, I mean, when somebody's trying to get a fake passport so they can leave the country, there's obviously a reason that they're trying to do that, which, we're trying to figure out. But, yeah, and to Lebanon, out of all places.
Yeah, I assume that had something to do with his wife's from Middle East, Egyptish.
She's from Egypt.
Area, yeah. So maybe it had something to do with that. Now he claims to have done. Oh, this is a topic that's worth discussing. He claims to have, in that interview with, was it Vidler and a couple of the other officers, where they're sort of. It's not. I don't know if it was interrogation. I don't know if this was a consensual interview where he was free to leave at any time. But they're talking to him and they're like, "Did you ever serve in the military?" And he goes, "Yes." Now, when he says, "Did you ever serve in the military?" Actually, in this in the fugitive article, it says that he was accepted into Florida National Guard. So I think when he says, "I served in the military," that's where that comes from. He's just embellished it to the point where it is an actual lie, because he definitely didn't serve 12 years and is a major and jumped into Fallujah where there were no airborne soldiers in the first place, and it was the Marines, not the Army, although the Army supported after the fact. It's a whole thing. His story doesn't check out. There is no one who has looked into this who has been able to establish that it is accurate in any way. But I think the lie stemmed from his application into the National Guard. So when he says, like, "Oh, I was trained by the military," it probably means that he was taught how to do push-ups by a recruiter, right? Like, that's... I went to a recruiter. They taught me how to do some basics, how to use military time, how to march, how to do push-ups, what commands to respond to in what way. And it was a very brief sort of, hey, here's a crash course so you don't absolutely die in basic training. And I assume when he says, "I was trained by the military," that's what he's referring to, because the best lies have a basis in fact. And Jeremy's pretty good at lying. It's just he's been getting caught in them. But the best thing about his lies is that he lets you jump to your own conclusions. And this is something I did when I worked in drug suppression quite a bit, is I'd be talking to commanders, and I did not have to provide my rank when they'd want to know who I was. And they'd be like, "Are you a lieutenant or something?" I'm like, "Well, let me tell you, I was a PFC, which is pretty low ranking." I'd be like, "Look, I can't tell you what I am. I'm investigator." But, hey, if I wasn't of a certain rank, I imagine I wouldn't be able to talk to you like we're talking, sir, like buddy. And I would let them jump to the conclusion, "Oh, this man must be at least a lieutenant, maybe a captain. Okay, cool, got it. So he must be an officer." I wouldn't correct them. I would let them come to a conclusion, because I didn't have to give my rank. And to prevent them from thinking that they could boss me around, I didn't, go to position of attention and call them sir every second word. They jump to conclusions. This is something I utilize a lot. Jeremy does the same thing. So when he says, like, "Oh, I was in the Middle East, I worked with a company out there," and he doesn't tell you what he did. And so one of the officers says, "Oh, did you work with, like, Blackwater?" He goes, "Oh, Blackwater? No, I didn't work with them. It was one of the other." And then he lets the officers keep suggesting things. Go, "Nope, wasn't that one. Nope, that one wasn't it." And he sort of makes it sound like it was a similar company that did, security and combat operations. I sincerely doubt it was. He's just letting the officers come to their own conclusions. He never specifically states who he was with, what he was doing. In fact, anytime they actually ask, like, "Can you give us specifics?" he basically doesn't. At one point, one of the officers says, "Look, man, we know you don't have a security clearance. There's nothing stopping you from telling us this," right? But he let everyone jump to their own conclusions without technically lying, I think, which is an impressive thing to be able to do, and good for him, obviously morally and ethically wrong. But when you hear him speak, do not jump to conclusions. Question everything, because I sincerely believe that when he talks about his experience in the Middle East, it is nothing like he let people believe during that interview interrogation situation.
Yeah, well, I guess my response to that would be, I hope, I hope Jeremy Dewitt does not decide to take the stand in his own defense. I hope.
Oh God, enough
sense to keep him off the stand.
I mean, let's assume this whole situation is true with Dr. Phil, right? If he's deciding to go on Dr. Phil, I can't imagine that he would decline to go on the stand. And Amir's not dumb. He's going to have rehearsed all of the things, all of the questions that he thinks Jeremy will be asked. So Jeremy will have practiced his answers, and they won't be untruthful, but he'll have practiced the answers to give them in the best possible way. And this is very common when it comes to court. I've been coached on not what answers to give, but how to give them. Basically, because I've defended my own investigations, my own cases in court. And as a member of the prosecution, when I'm questioned, basically what I've been instructed to do by the prosecutions, keep your answers short. If you need time, drink a little bit of water, ask them to repeat the question, but keep your answers short. What they want you to do is start going off on a tangent, giving too much information, and they'll pounce on you and they'll destroy you, right? Answers as short as possible. Now, do I always listen to that? No, because sometimes I can predict where they're trying to go and sort of beat them to it, which is always fun because it's a little game, mental cat and mouse. But I miss it. I miss going to court and doing that. But it doesn't matter. Jeremy's not going to be happy with it because he actually has there are consequences to his actions. If I don't do well in court, it's not my problem. So, not that I've ever done poorly in court, or have I? We don't know. But yeah, I think he probably will testify. I think he'll have prepared answers, and I don't know that it'll go the way he thinks it will, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Or Amir might just keep him off the stand.
I mean, that's true.
You know?
You can't be compelled to testify against yourself, if I remember correctly. So maybe Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, and the jury, the jury can't, consider that as proof of guilt, or not supposed to. So, no, it's gonna like I think I mentioned it the last time we did one of these live streams. This case is just the gift that keeps on giving. I'm almost tempted to invest a little bit of time and money and actually fly out to Orlando and attend the trial, assuming with the COVID situation, whether it's going to be a public trial or not.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they're not going to allow anyone to attend it because of COVID. They've been certainly reducing the public attendance. If there isn't a recording, I definitely will be requesting the minutes so we can at least read. If there are only minutes, I'm definitely going to get people to act it out with me and sort of reenact the situation to the best of our ability. But yeah, it's going to be good.
Well, as Jeremy Dewitt would say, Blue, you better figure it out.
Figure it out. I got to learn how to 50-50 those intersections.
But yeah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you heard anything further about any plea that he's been offered? Because I know you mentioned before there was a deal on the table.
Any
more information about that? Or?
Pretty good sources received information about a potential plea deal. Now, whether or not this information is accurate, I don't know. But I haven't recently heard anything. I think the most recent thing I heard was that the judge. It might not have been the judge. It might have been someone else high up. But I believe it was the judge was like, I don't really want to give this guy anything less than 10 years.
Whoa.
Initially, they're like 1 year in jail and then 20 years probation where he can't have hold a position of authority. I don't know if they're allowed to, if that's like a legitimate thing that they can do for the conditions of parole. I'm not super familiar with how all that works. But the most recent information, whether or not this is true, these are allegations. I don't want anyone out there to take this as this is absolute fact. This is just what I've heard in my little rumor mill through all my secret spies hidden all over the country, of which there may be none. I might just be exaggerating. The most recent thing I heard is that the judge wants to give him at least 10 years if he is found guilty on all of the felony charges. I mean, he's looking at 80 years. Wow. At least, I think. It was at least 80. It was at least 80 years. So 10 years out of 80 is pretty good. And I think if there's a plea deal, he should seriously consider it. I won't say, take a plea deal if you're offered. Because it's not my place to offer legal advice. That's what Jeremy is hiring Amir for. But Amir will have a pretty good idea of whether or not, the plea deal is reasonable. And Jeremy has used Amir for well over a decade, if I remember correctly.
So they have a history.
Yeah, so he should. I mean, I imagine Jeremy would trust Amir. But chat is asking about this this whole passport thing, and I have the article up if we want to go over the details of that. All the fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Jeremy Dewitt appears to have one more alias on the list. Brett E. Solomon. That's the list of his whole aliases, which he has to provide to law enforcement as a registered sex offender, I believe. So around 2003, Jeremy Dewitt and Brett E. Solomon reside in the same home in Ocoee, Florida. During this time, the two allegedly conspired to make a fake passport for Jeremy. Again, that's probably because he was on parole and couldn't travel outside of the country as conditions of his parole. Although I'm sure there could have been actions he could have taken to sort of petition the government to be like, hey, but can I leave, please? He wanted to travel to Beirut, Lebanon, for unknown reasons. And from March 2003 until May 2003, the two conspired to make false statements in an application for a passport. Now, I have his case up here, where he was charged for using a false or fictitious name for a driver's license application and unauthorized possession of an identity card or identifying card, whichever the two has an abbreviation. And the offense date was 3/25 and 3/24 of 2003. So March, the end of March was when this would have started. I have a few other links. Let's see. So allegedly, March 25th, Jeremy obtained a Florida driver's license with Jeremy's photo and address and Brett's name and driver's license number. Interestingly enough, that is illegal. I believe that is a felony. Let's check the charges. Third-degree felony and third-degree felony. Yeah, so don't do that, folks. That's a big deal. And he did manage to leave the country. He applied for a U.S. passport using Brett Solomon's name in Miami-Dade County. Then he traveled to Beirut, came back. Warrant was issued for his arrest in September 25th, 2003. Now, this is where things start to get weird, because a warrant for his arrest was issued in July, I believe. The affidavit to issue a warrant was in July 1st, 2003. So the dates on this article do not appear accurate based on what I'm finding in the Orange County record search. A bunch of paperwork is seen. It looks accurate, and my mod has requested all the files on this so we can confirm and sort of fact check this. But according to this article, and stop me to interrupt me at any time, because I'm just going to go right through this. So supposedly Brett was charged with conspiring to commit an offense against the United States, faced a maximum of 5 years in prison, was given a bond of $25,000. So Brett and Jeremy were both allegedly charged with conspiracy. That would be, two or more people planning to commit a crime and then committing an overt act. Basically, the moment Jeremy went and used the ID card, that was the overt act, and that meant conspiracy was a valid charge. A lot of people think conspiracy is a really terrifying charge because they think, conspiring against the United States, treason or something. No, conspiracy is just two or more people, planning a crime and then engaging in at least one overt action to make it happen. Even if everyone stops and goes, you know what, no, we don't want to do this anymore. If you plan on robbing a bank with a hammer and you go out and buy that hammer and then decide later not to do it, you've still committed conspiracy. Fun fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't know that, and they sort of think conspiracy is scary. I don't want to know about it. No, it's a great thing to know because they'll sneak that one in on you. A bunch of paperwork. Jeremy was charged with conspiring to commit an offense against the United States, so he faced a maximum of 15 years in prison and was given a bond of $150,000. Now, if that's true, that makes more sense because he was the one that actually committed all the acts. So it was more than just conspiracy. It was, the actual act itself. And then the paperwork alleging that's true. Now, I've run this case, and I haven't found this actual case under his name. There was one for possession of cocaine. There was one for, I forget what the other thing was. But I was searching in county courts. I think this might have been in federal court. I'm not really, the Southern District of Florida, United States District Court. I think that is federal court. And I need a Pacer account to access those, which costs a lot of money, and so I have not done that. So do I know if these papers are accurate? No, I have no idea. I do not make enough money to purchase myself a Pacer account specifically for this. Although every once in a while, I'm like, I wish I had a Pacer account because some of this stuff would be really useful. So Brett entered a plea of not guilty November 6, 2003 in an arraignment. However, it appears Jeremy Dewitt made other plans on the day of his arraignment. On December 23, 2003, U.S. District Judge Joan A. Leonard declared Jeremy Dewitt was a fugitive from justice. And then we have paperwork that appears to establish this. Here is my problem with this. And this paperwork.
So I guess he bonded out?
I guess so, but this says it was an arraignment, right? So Brett had an arraignment November 6th. We can assume that Jeremy had an arraignment around the same time. The problem is, according to the court documents in the Orange Clerk certification, Jeremy was found guilty in October 3rd for actually committing the offense. So
Okay.
that would have been, allegedly he was a fugitive for not showing up to his arraignment hearing after, was it December 10th? Hold on. Or October. Let me see. I have it here. Maybe. I had it here. Nope, I have the date wrong. So he's adjudicated guilty on October 22nd, 2003. And apparently the arraignment hearing is November. And he was sentenced to 10 months in prison with 114 days time served. To serve the sentences concurrently, I believe, if I'm translating this correctly. Now, this federal thing, it is possible that I'm getting this wrong because this was federal court and he's being charged with federal crimes, and therefore the arraignment happened after he was sentenced for this one, because this was a state crime. Yes, this was a Florida statute as opposed to a federal statute. So it's possible he was found guilty for this, and then later there was an arraignment for conspiracy. I think that's probably what happened. That's where I was getting really confused and just popped in my head just now, like, oh, that's probably what happened, why I'm confused. But weirdly, I looked at Brett Solomon, and he doesn't have a criminal record of any of this. And again, it might be under the federal, if I search Florida-wide, if I search at the federal level, I'd probably find something. But I searched Miami-Dade, I searched Putnam County, I searched Orange County, and the only criminal record that Brett Solomon has is basically traffic infractions and traffic misdemeanors, which I think his misdemeanor was reckless endangerment, which he pled no contendere to. Don't know. So there's a lot of weird things in this that are explainable, but I can't confirm, which is why we're requesting all this information. Like, hey, hold on a second. And that way I don't have to be like, hey, Pacer, give me information for money. But yeah, there's it appears that this is accurate. Courts later realized Jeremy Dewitt was confined to the Putnam Correctional Institute in Palatka, Florida, which is why I searched the Putnam stuff. But it kind of appears that he was sentenced to Orange County Jail, I would assume. OCJ is Orange County Jail. I don't know. There are a lot of abbreviations I'm not familiar with here. So this whole thing is kind of weird. And I don't trust this website to have written it correctly, especially after there was that whole article that I talked about where they're like, oh, the jurisdiction was wrong for the initial case, right? They were outside their jurisdiction, therefore it's fruit of the poisonous tree. None of this is applicable in court. If that was the case, this whole thing would probably be dismissed by now. But I feel like I established fairly well that was not the case, in that since it was they followed him outside jurisdiction where they were allowed to pull him over, as long as it was a pursuit from their jurisdiction, then it was fine. So shenanigans. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what, Blue Bacon, we could just, bypass, doing the research, and you could just call Jeremy yourself and get the.
He does not talk to me anymore. He does not.
I mean, we know he'd tell the truth. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he's an honest guy. No, I think there is. Oh, Tom, thank you so much. You surprised me there. You guys are the best. Tom just donated money. I want to say something real quick about the donations. If I ever don't thank you, I want you to know that I'm absolutely mind-boggled that you donate to my ridiculousness. There was a guy last stream that donated, and I forgot to thank him. I acknowledged him, and I was about to thank him, but I was so caught up in basically being absurd and pretending to be a different channel and alluding to their ridiculous actions, that I completely forgot what my train of thought was and didn't finish my my thinking of him. So I put out a public community post about that if this guy's watching, if he ever watches me again. So if you ever donate money, understand that I am incredibly appreciative. Thank you, Tom. And to firefighter, was it Larry? So sorry if I got that wrong. You guys are amazing. Anyway, where was I? We were saying something about Jeremy not talking to me anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would make it a whole lot easier. We could go, directly to the source, get it from the horse himself. But, the stolen valor question did it. So.
DCM, thank you so much. So, I think, there are a lot of weird things that caught my attention in that article, and there are a lot of weird things that the Jeremy Dewitte case has posted that I know for a fact are not true. And so either they're just not understanding the documents they're looking at, or a lot of these documents come from federal court, which I don't have access to. So it's a weird situation. This was certainly not a great time in Jeremy's life. There was a lot going on for him. And this, again, poor life choices. He doesn't seem to really learn from his mistakes. Or if he learns, it doesn't sort of seem to stick. He just keeps messing up. Like, if I do something wrong, I lay low for a while. And I'm not being like, oh, if I commit a felony. No, if I mess something up, I'm going to be a little cautious about it. Right? If I get yelled at by my boss, I'm going to be like, oh, I should probably learn a little bit about what I'm doing wrong here. And then, be a lot more careful when repeating that so that it's done correctly.
Exactly.
So I feel like that's just not something that goes through his head, unfortunately. And it's a shame. Like, he has potential. I think with the right mentors, with the right people growing up, he would have been a good cop. I know that's a super controversial thing to say, but he's charismatic. He has a great command presence. And if he used his powers for good instead of bad, he would have just made sergeant. They would have been like, yep, promote this man. He would have been excellent. And I think he knows that. But it bothers him that he'll never be able to do that. So he's created a world in which he can live up to his wasted potential. Unfortunately, he just doesn't know how to make good decisions. I know.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point with that. Yeah, it really, he's the guy, and like you, you beat me to it. It is kind of, it's highly controversial / debatable in this in the Jeremy Dewitte community that whether he probably would have made a good cop if he would have had the right guidance.
Yeah, and it's
and the right.
People hate that I say that. They absolutely, like, DCM just asked for his $5 back. I'll give it back if you really want it. But no, it's obviously it's never going to work for him now, and it's 20 years too late for this guy. But he has some of this. He has some of the interpersonal skills. If he just can control, if he could control his temper, which would be his main limiting factor, if he had a good mentor to sort of keep him on the up and up and within the law. If he can control his temper, he has a lot of the skills that are very, very difficult to teach in an academy and that have to be learned over time. When you have someone come through the academy who has great interpersonal skills and can take control of a situation, that's very rare and very, very beneficial to the department. It allows them to be a lot better as a police officer. Jeremy has that. It's just he went down the dark side and said, the Jedi path. But he's way, way too late for that now. I don't want anyone to think like, oh, he still has a chance. No, he does not. No. But when he was 18, I could have seen there being a possibility. If we go back in time, and I can sort of take him aside and say, don't be stupid, right? Even farther back than that, because at that point, like, he was already set in his ways. If I could go back to when he was like 12 and sort of be like the weird uncle making sure he did good things, I feel like we could have made a decent cop out of him. But yeah.
Well, I'd like to say something about that, and it's really a good point, because I'll tell you, when I first moved to this area, the Central Coast of California, this was years ago. I was working at Domino's Pizza as a delivery driver, And there was a guy that I worked with, and his name was Lupe. I'll just say Lupe. And me and him used to hang out after work, and we, when you're working a job, there's certain coworkers that you kind of hit it off with more than others, and Lupe was one of those. Well, Lupe ended up becoming a cop, and he works for a small police department in San Luis Obispo County. And I recently ran into him, I want to say probably about 8 months ago.
Sure.
I was doing an audit, actually. Hey, figure that, me doing an audit. And long story short, I ran into Lupe. He was, on duty, driving a squad car in a uniform. Now, I know when I worked with him at Domino's, I knew he had went through the police academy, and he was applying at various departments in this area, and then he went out of the area. He went to like Kern County, and he was trying to get hired, and then I stopped working there, and I lost contact with him. So when I ran into him, I hadn't seen him in like 20 years, and we talked on the side of the road for about, literally, I'm not exaggerating, almost 2 hours.
Wow.
Catching up and.
Yeah.
And long story short, we exchanged phone numbers, and he's like, "Hey man, let's go have a drink, do lunch," and we, I've seen him a couple times since then. We've gone and had drinks and lunch, and But back when the reason I'm bringing this up is, as it relates to Jeremy, is that when I knew Lupe back, when we were both in our 20s and delivering pizza, I mean, he had a big mouth. I mean, he used to talk shit. I mean, he was not. The guy that I see now he's, a cop and he's professional. I mean, of course, when we're hanging out, we're, talking about whatever, but he even told me, he said, it was a tough transition. He's like, you remember how I was, man? I like to talk shit. I mean, those were his words. But he said, I had to make that transition if this was what I was going to do. And obviously he did. So I think it's possible that Jeremy could have, if he would have had the right mentor and the right guidance, it could have, and hadn't started committing, felonious offenses. I mean, it's very possible Jeremy could have become a police officer. I don't think that's beyond the realm of, possibility.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously too late, and I would never think that in his current state it would work for him. I don't like to be like, no, this person's absolute just terrible. There are some exceptions. Eric Brandt, for example, I feel like is maybe beyond my sympathy. For example, to bring up someone you might recognize, just in the way he behaves and things he's done. But
I actually met him once.
Have you? I hear he's not bad in person. It's just when he's getting riled up, he gets really riled up. And it's not that I wish, for the worst for Eric Brandt. I don't wish for the worst with Jeremy Dewitte. I want to help them be better people and do better things. But I feel like I could tolerate Jeremy a little better than someone like Eric. And I think it's probably because Eric and I are just such different people. Whereas I can find similarities with Jeremy, whether I like it or not. I'm not going to say I have nothing in common with the man and ignore the truth. But, people just, give you 1 second to catch up. Pebmets, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I'm hearing.
Oh wow! Look at that.
I'm seeing, someone donate $5 so I never wear this shirt again. How dare you? This shirt's amazing. DC
General Aloha shirt on, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. You'll find out
sure.
in the near future. That's the plan. There is a reason. The first police report from 1998 tells you all you need to know. He has been using his power for bad since as early as 18. Yes, which is why I retracted my statement. If I could get to him at the age of 18, if I could get to him at the age of 12, because 18 he was already doing real shady stuff. If I could help him through his developmental stages, if that was possible, I would have. If I had the time and I was in a position to do it and I knew what would happen if I didn't. Scott? You mad lad. Thank you so much. You know what? I'm using that to buy a new camera, so you don't have to look at my fuzzy face through this, and also probably to buy a better razor, so I don't have to have this enormous beard in my face. Thank you so much, you guys. My goodness, I need to stream more often. S Hall says, "Nice shirt." You're right, S Hall. It is a nice shirt. $5 to take it off. That's a joke. We're not. I'm not. This isn't. I don't have an OnlyFans, but if I did, that's where that content would be. Yeah, it's anyway. Speaking of auditors, I brought up someone to you. I don't know if you feel like talking about 51550, who's an auditor that just came across my radar, and I thought this might be a good time to bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I did want to say something really quick before we get into that, because you mentioned Eric Grant, and I gotta tell you this. I remember when Eric Grant came to California. This was last, was it maybe October last year? You know, it's been a little over a year. Anyway, he came out here. He hit me up and wanted to meet up. I mean, he emailed me he reached out to me and well, I was really surprised because I've never interacted with him. I mean, I wasn't sure if he even knew who I was, and but he wanted to meet a certain California audience, and I was one of the people he wanted to meet. And
nice,
yeah. Surprised me, and I'll be honest with you, Blue. I was very hesitant about, and this is not a put down on Eric at all. I was just, our styles are very different.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, you've seen his videos. You've seen mine.
I have. I don't. I'm not a huge fan of some of his antics. There are some things he does that I disagree with that are technically lawful, so I can't be fully against them. And I get a lot of hate for that too, because people are like, "Why don't you come?" There's a guy I've been watching a lot of, Schrodinger's Cat, that does a lot of videos about auditors and sovereign citizens, and he's. I find him entertaining, but there's a lot that he says that, I mean, he's very much against the whole auditing movement. And most of the time he calls out people who are absolutely doing the wrong thing. But there are occasionally times where he calls out people who aren't wrong. There's a video I just watched where there were a few FBI agents that arrested an auditor. It was News Now Community, which is Earl David Warden. And I'm not a huge fan by any means of what Warden has gotten himself into and I would say the honey pots he stuck his fingers in. If that is, I mean, that's alludes to some of the situations and the charges, but the FBI agents were absolutely in the wrong.
I remember when that happened.
Yeah, like I watched that and I was shocked. I was talking to Rennie, my moderator. I was like, "Have you seen this?" She goes, "Yeah, I was waiting for you to see it." And what your thoughts were. I'm like, well, no, the agents violated his First and Fourth Amendment rights multiple times. Like when they took the first camera, when they took the violation of his freedom of press. Although took the second camera in violation of his right to petition the government for redress of grievances. When they searched him, if he was actually arrested, then they unlawfully restricted his movement because he didn't meet the criteria for disorderly conduct, which is what he was charged with. When they didn't arrest him, well, then they can't search him for his ID because that goes past the extends past the scope of a Terry search, which is what would be basically the only permissible search. I intend to do a video on that because the agents were way outside what they were allowed to do, in my personal and professional opinion. But there are times where it's like...
Yeah, that was like 3 years ago. That was a while ago.
Yeah, that was 2017, and I still haven't figured out what came of it. I know the charges were dismissed, which is exactly what I expected. But I don't know if there was a civil suit. And if there wasn't a civil suit, I think, honestly, there should have been. This should have been another Musi versus DHS situation for the DOJ instead of the DHS, in my personal opinion.
I'm not sure whatever came of that, but yeah, that was a big deal when that happened, and I actually did my first FBI audit shortly after the incident, and it was there. I learned that there was actually an FBI not a field office, but what do they call it, like a satellite office or something?
Yeah.
They have an office here in San Diego.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can't remember for the life of me what they're called.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, they had their own building. There was a gate around it, and it was definitely, an FBI, building, and I went there and audited it, and got some cam backing and things like that. For the most part, I mean, they left me alone. And I remember, I think I titled the video or something like, the FBI has learned to behave themselves, or something cheesy like that. I don't remember, but. I wanted to tell you. I have to mention this to you. When how I was saying earlier how I was very, very hesitant about meeting Eric Brandt. When I finally did agree to go, when I agreed to go meet him, and I picked him up in Burbank, and we, I hung out with him for about 4 hours. We did an audit. I mean, Blue, and I'm not saying that just, to defend him because he's an auditor or or whatever. I mean, super nice guy. Very, very respectful, very humble. I mean, I remember seeing him, when I picked him up, and he had his "fuck the police" shirt on. And I'm thinking, all right, here we go, And,
yep, boy.
He was really, and I remember when he got in the car. I mean, he wanted to go get a cup of coffee, so we went and got some coffee, and then after that, I was like, well, so what do you want to do? Do you want to do an audit? And he said, I just want to hang out. He's like, I'll do whatever you want to do. And I was like, okay, well, I was trying to think of a place and that we could audit that was in that area, because he was meeting up with somebody else later.
Sure.
And out of, never guess the place that we audited. This is, it wasn't Scientology. It wasn't a.
That was exactly what I was going to guess.
No. We audited Jay Leno's garage.
Oh, I remember I remember seeing that video. I don't know if I ever watched it, but I remember. No, I did watch it. It was on your channel.
That was with Eric Brandt.
Videos of yours I ever saw back when I was sort of still learning about the auditing and what it was.
And he was there, and he came out.
Oh, that's crazy. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty brief interaction, but we did get an interaction with him. And then some of his other workers came out. But the highlight, of course, was Jay. Part of the reason I wanted to audit that place was because I'm subscribed, because I like cars. I mean, what guy doesn't?
Sure.
And, Jay's a huge car collector, and and I follow his channel. It's called Jay Leno's Garage. And, so... Yeah, but that was and even during that audit, Eric Brandt was very nice to everyone that approached us, and was just I was like, wow, this is like a totally different guy than what I was used to seeing,
That doesn't surprise. Like, I get aggressive. Like, people are like, oh, yeah, calm, collected. I hear that sometimes. At those protests, I got aggressive. I got much more aggressive than I expected. I understand auditors getting...
You had every reason to.
Yeah. It would have behooved me to be more like, oh, okay, I'll back up. It's fine. And I learned a thing or two about myself and about what riots are like and mob mentality. It was a great learning tool, and it happened. I survived it. With very few injuries, because I engaged in protective shenanigans prior, just in case I was stupid, which I was. I'll fully admit that. But it's I'm not surprised that he is different in person. I found that with a lot of people, is they have these personalities that they bring out when they're doing these things. I've seen him take it way too far, to the point where it's you can't excuse it, like, oh, it's just a bit I'm doing. Who was the guy that mailed the cat?
Nailed the cat?
Yeah, he mailed a dead cat to someone. He ended up being charged with stalking. He says, I can do this, I can film whoever I want in public. And he ended up stalking this old lady and mailing her like a dead cat. Just because
I'm not familiar with that.
That one I was just like, I couldn't believe. That is so far beyond anything that would be acceptable in the auditing community. Like, Eric Brandt is right at the edge of like, this guy he needs to learn a little bit more about how disorderly conduct works in regards to First Amendment protected activities. Because yeah, you can say what you want. Like if you go up to a police officer, if they're talking to you and you just like quietly just call them every name in the book, they can't get you for disorderly conduct for the most part. But if you're screaming it, there can be exceptions to First Amendment protected activities when it comes to volume. So it's things like that where it's like, Eric Brandt, like you go so far. This is like, if you're going to engage in these activities, you need to understand where exactly the limit is. Ian McGuire, that's the one. Ian McGuire is the one who mailed a dead cat. He is in jail. I'm not happy with that. This whole thing started because I was talking about 5150 and how she had a lot of potential because she doesn't get angry. And the issue with her is she doesn't fully understand how trespassing works when it comes to First Amendment protected activities. There are a lot of little details that a lot of people don't understand. I want to help the auditing community with that, just like I want to help Metro State be a functioning, successful company acting within the law, right? Well, I don't really care about their success. I just want them to not be breaking the law, which is, my best interest in it. But I fully forgot where this was going. But I can tell you where the chat wanted to go.
Well, Merv, I mean, that's something, of course, we can't do a lot of things without mentioning Merv.
Oh, man, me and Merv, man. Oh, we don't play well together.
I talked with Merv. I mean, I've actually sat down and had dinner with him. I mean, the guy, and he said, and he sticks to it when he says that he started making videos because he actually wanted to help auditors understand the law and understand the differences. And when you mentioned that 5150 gal, I think of 5150, I think of the Van Halen album. But sorry, but
no.
I think the problem that she's having, and I'm not too familiar with. I mean, I went and checked out some of her stuff when you had emailed me about it, but I think the problem that she's having, and I think a lot of people have had this, is that, and Merv has discussed this extensively, they don't understand the difference between a traditional public forum and a non-traditional public forum.
That's exactly it. That's what a lot of people don't understand, is that there's more than one type of public. And I completely understand that. And of course, if you don't know about this, that there's more than one type of public, or that public property, when used to refer to government property, doesn't mean publicly accessible property. And what property can the First Amendment right to expression be restricted on more than other types of public property? That's something that so many auditors don't understand. And I sort of gauge who is a good auditor with how receptive they are to me presenting that information, saying, well, actually, these are these things. And my initial comments on a channel will almost always be very polite. And then, how sassy I get will depend entirely upon the interaction I have with people on the channel. If an auditor rejects that information, well, now I have concerns about that auditor, because the information I give about traditional public forums this is coming from legal sources when I give it. I read the case law. I go through this stuff. I read the articles written by lawyers. I read, the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union websites, which are often somewhat inaccurate. They don't address a lot of the... I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they read ACLU and they go, now I know everything. ACLU is a very vague, broad generalization of how these rights work. And there are a lot of exceptions to things they put out that they do not cover. The same with if you read a lawyer's website, like, were you charged with this? Let's tell you about it. They're not going to give you all the details. They're going to make it sound like it's a lot simpler than it is, to make it sound like they can beat it for you. And it's really simple to beat, and that is not the case, but it gets them more money because more people are like, these people are telling me all these things. It must be so easy. Whatever. There's a lot of information out there that does not go into enough depth. And the problem is, if you're not used to reading case law, it can be very difficult to sort of get accustomed to the way it's written. When I first started reading case law, I felt so out of my depth. Now I'm used to it. I really enjoy it. And now that I've had, the time to go like talk to lawyers. I have some friends that were attorneys, and we go over it, and I go, "Am I correct in this?" And they go, "Yes. Well, this is how you should interpret this, and this is what you should look into further, and here's how it's addressed in the case." So, it's not. I'm sure I'm not perfect in my interpretation of it, but I do know a thing or two about traditional public forums and non-public forums, and a lot of auditors ignore that, especially a lot of the new ones. And we've talked about auditing in. We've brought this up before when we were talking about auditing in post offices.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people think that, because, it's a public lobby. Well, yeah, but are you there for business? Are you there to mail packages or buy stamps? I mean, I'll give you another example. There's a guy, an auditor, he's new. He's from Monterey County, which is, north of me here in California. And he's Anthony X. And I like him a lot. He goes out by himself. He's not really into the mix. He does his own thing, and he's pretty respectful. But he recently did a state prison, solid ed prison. And now he actually messaged me before he did it, and and I told him, he's like, yeah, I've audited some prisons, state and federal and county jails and so forth, and he was like, well, where do you think I should stand? And I said, well, let's look at Google Earth and and I was like, you know what, from what I'm seeing, and it turned out that I was right. I gave him the point, the intersection or whatever. I know it's generic the way I'm describing it over the phone, but of where he shouldn't go beyond. I said, I wouldn't go across beyond this point here, because there's a big yellow line, and there are signs right there that say, you are now entering state prison property, no cameras, no illegal drugs, no firearms, explosives, just like the TSA signs.
That's a pretty good indicator. SVG had a similar situation, but he ignored those signs.
Yeah, I remember. You did a video about it.
I did do it. He was not happy about that. He was pretty mad.
Well,
I said things.
And so Anthony X, took my advice, and he's like, I said, look, just you can still see. I mean, yeah, it's an older prison, so it's kind of a ways back off the road. But you can, I would just stand. I wouldn't go beyond that yellow marker. I wouldn't go beyond the signs. I would stay right there. And I think you're going to be okay. And they came out and kind of, but ultimately nothing happened. He didn't get arrested. He didn't, and they left, and he continued to do what he was doing. But there was an argument that started between two of his commenters. One of them is a guy that I actually know. I mean, know as far as, like, he's been a subscriber for a long time and so forth. And then somebody else that I didn't. And this guy was trying to tell him, trying to tell the Anthony X, the auditor, that, oh no, you need to go back, and you need to go all the way up to the guard shack, which is a ways down the road, like past the signs, past the yellow marker, like clearly on state prison property. You need to go all the way up to the guard shack. You need to go back there. So he's telling the guy to go on to state prison. Now, I mean, I could talk about this for 2 days, but basically, his attitude was what you get from a lot of people in this community that say, well, it's state prison property. We own it. I'm sure you've heard that before in the auditing community. Oh, it's public property. It's county property. It's state property. We own it. We pay taxes. It's ours. And I'm like, to me, and I told Anthony, I said, no, don't do that.
There's a Supreme Court case that I like to throw out at that point, which is United States Postal Service versus the City of Greensburg Council of Civic Associations, Council of Greens, something like that. Basically, in which the Supreme Court was like, look, just because property is owned by the government does not mean it is open for public use, right? And I think, the case was about people just putting unstamped letters in letter boxes however they felt like, and the Supreme Court mostly addressed that. But at the end of it, like, look, as a vague and general statement, just because the government owns property does not make it open and accessible to the public, and that's a pretty big deal. Like, that's a huge ruling. So that's something.
Yeah,
think is pretty important to this whole thing.
Yeah, and the guy that he was like, I said, these were just two guys arguing in the comments, and I just
Mm-hmm.
did that.
Yeah.
Like, but I told Anthony.
You're smarter than me. I usually get involved.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not even sticking my nose into that.
Yeah.
But the guy that he was arguing with was arguing with this commenter that was trying to tell him, no, it's state prison property, you own it, was basically saying what you just said, like, look, you know, I mean, you don't have business there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you there? I think he asked him something like, I mean, are you there to visit somebody? Are you an outside contractor coming to do work at the prison or something like that, you know? But and the reason I brought that up was that's just a classic example of how people seem they just so confused. I mean, you know, state prison property is not a traditional public forum. And it's a classic example of not understand the difference between a traditional public forum and a non-traditional public forum. You know, just like the visitor center of a military base is not a traditional public forum, and I know that's another issue altogether.
Yeah.
But people just, I mean, part of the reason why I never did, and I know we've talked about it in the past, part of the reason why I never audited Vandenberg Air Force Base. I mean, people say, hey, you live in Santa Maria, you're only 30 minutes from there, why don't you go audit it? And I'm like, part of the reason I never did was because, and it's a weird situation, that highway, which is a public highway, you can drive on it, but it runs through the military base, because Vandenberg covers a huge area. I mean, if you look at the boundaries, I mean, and there are actually signs on the highway that say, you know, that you are entering Vandenberg, you know, military base, blah blah blah. But then at a certain point, you get up to an intersection where, you know, you turn and then you either go straight and go drive onto the base. Well, technically you are on the base, but you go to the security checkpoint, or you go left and you go into the city of Lawful. Well,
right.
And that's where the guard shack is, and that's where all that. And yeah, I mean, it definitely would be good for an audit, you know. But I personally didn't feel comfortable doing it because I'm like, well, yeah, that is a public highway in the sense that, yeah, people traveling between like Santa Maria and Lawful can drive on that highway. I mean, but technically you're still on the installation, so is this really a traditional public forum? I don't know.
Well, it counts as an easement through the base. And there was a case that I'm searching right now. Case. No, that's not. United States versus Apple or Pell, which was... this guy had been banned from a base. It was Vandenberg. Yeah, it was Vandenberg. So that highway, basically this guy was banned from the base, and he conducted a protest on that highway in an area that was sort of designated for that sort of thing. And the base went, hey guy, you're still on our property. So, I mean, that is still federal property that belongs to the base. And let me see what the ruling was. I don't remember, but it was certainly a kind of a big deal. Let me see. The United States argues that the easement forming the part of Highway 1 on Vandenberg provides that the highway is subject to rules and regulations promulgated by the base commander. Further, the United States contends that a public roadway easement does not contain an implicit right to engage in public protest, and that the easement here does not contain such a provision. Further, the United States argues that at common law, exclusive possession is not required to maintain an action. For trespass, a mere possessory interest is sufficient. So basically, it is base property, the base controls it, and they have allowed it for travel, but they are not allowing it for anything else. Is that what the actual ruling was, or just what the base said? I forget. I haven't looked. I haven't dealt with the whole 18 USC 795 and 50 USC 797 thing in a while. So regarding filming a military installation, there is a federal law that prohibits it. There are actually two. One prohibits specifically if you're on the base. One seems to imply that it could be implemented on someone who is off the installation on public property. In this case, It would be on the federal property, so it shouldn't matter. It should be 50 U.S.C. 797. And 18 U.S.C. 797 or 795 should absolutely apply because it's not actually, a traditional public forum. It's a whole thing. It's basically the point of contention between me and Merb and why we're at each other's throats all the time, or we used to be. We sort of avoid each other now because we have no reason to engage with each other. And we've had this discussion before, is while no one has been convicted of violating 18 U.S.C. 795 from a traditional public forum, people have been arrested and they've never fully beaten those charges. The charges have been dismissed in many cases. But no one has been able to file a civil suit that established that it was wrong to be arrested for 18 U.S.C. 795 because they were filming from public property. So while they'll probably beat the case, if the base feels like really going to town in prosecution, it's unlikely that it will go anywhere, but it could still be very expensive. James Freeman had that issue. He was filming Fort Huachuca in Arizona, I think, and it cost him tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And eventually, the only thing that happened was the case was dismissed without prejudice, meaning the base could have filed those charges again. It's just that their key witness sort of had a boo-boo when it came to law enforcement, and they went, oh, we don't want this guy on the stand because it's going to make us look bad. And since there is no case law that has been established on this, we don't want to be responsible for the first bad case law. It's a whole thing. It's actually a very complicated situation. I would not recommend to any auditor, unless they understood fully what they were getting themselves into, to film a restricted military installation. I would not recommend that. Now
that's a high risk audit. Yeah,
it's a very high risk audit because although no one has been charged with 18 U.S.C. 795 while outside the area, or they've never been convicted, excuse me, that doesn't mean that you won't be the first, right? And it seems pretty well established that police absolutely have the right to arrest you for it. And there are a lot of reasons why, various people don't do the arrest, and whether the base commander wants it or not. If the local law enforcement are familiar with the statute enough to actually effect an arrest, it's a whole thing. It gets very, very, very messy. But all you have to do is end up in a situation where there is some local officer who knows exactly what that statute is, and your goose is potentially pretty cooked. So.
Yeah, and in the meantime, you're going to have to fight a case and go to court, and it's just going to be a hassle.
Or you could be the hero that actually finally beats that charge once and for all. Who knows? But that's going to be an expensive fight. So, I'm not saying that you will be convicted. I'm saying that police have the authority to make that arrest. It's a thing. I personally am not going to suggest that it happens. I've thought about doing it myself with a camera that was not turned on so that they couldn't charge me with 18 U.S.C. 795 because I'm not technically photographing anything, but it would just be a camera that's been turned off. It's enough for them to have reasonable suspicion to detain me, but not to arrest me, just to see what happens. So I think if you're going to do an audit, my suggestion would be to have a camera facing away from the base pointed at you, and then a camera that is turned off facing the base because it will effectively accomplish the exact same thing, but you won't be breaking the law. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, the military, from my experience, and this wasn't always the case, but in recent months or whatnot, I think that my experience has been that I think or at least in California, that when it comes to military installations, they're just not dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean,
when they see, they know. Yeah.
That's
what I think.
Fry. I mean, if you're military bases, they have JAG and they have SALSA. SALSA is Special Assistant U.S. Attorney, I think. Basically, they're the military lawyers that have passed the bar in the state locally, and so they deal with the state crimes, the local crimes. Whereas JAG deals with military crimes. There usually aren't too many SALSA attorneys. They generally deal with things involving spouses, non-military spouses, or if a soldier is violating a local law and it is not covered by a federal law. Basically, so on a military base, military police, such as what I used to be, we generally enforce federal law first, military law as well. But if there is no applicable law, we can enforce local law under the Assimilative Crimes Act. Generally, there is a federal law that will enforce, so we don't usually have to do that, which means that we don't usually need a lot of salsa. But if the military detains the person because they technically are on military property and they bring them onto the base and they charge them and the whole thing goes to the military court system, it's likely to get dropped because that's going to be a very, very lengthy fight because it is a constitutional fight. And Salsa just doesn't have time for that. They're dealing with bigger things. They're dealing with assaults and whatever. So they're probably going to be like, yeah, it's not worth our time. If you deal with local police, it's going to be a lot easier for them because their court system is better designed for it. It's just that the local police probably aren't going to be as familiar with that statute. That's that thin middle ground that a lot of auditors think, well, you know, I'm nothing's happening, therefore it's okay. When in reality, it's just not a good situation. And there was an auditor who filmed that joint base Lewis McCord. And I did a video on it. I even talked to some of the guys, some of the officers or the MPs who dealt with this guy. And they had him, and they were ready to arrest him. And some of these people I had personally worked with, so they knew. I had taught them things about 18 U.S.C. 795 because on my way out, when I was starting my channel, I was teaching a lot of MPs about this because I thought, if someone comes here, we'll be ready, right? Even if I'm not here for the next year and a half, we're going to have people who have gotten my information, and some of them actually knew. The problem is that the civilian detectives, whom I had worked with, some of them. One of them was like, I don't know where the jurisdiction of the base ends, so we're going to just dismiss everything because we don't know if these people are actually on military property, which isn't something that generally the detectives would know because they're not responsible for making the actual arrest. They just sort of show up. They're second responders, as I like to call them. However, the MPs, the ones doing patrol work, are very familiar with the actual boundary, the federal boundary of Joint Base Lewis McCord. We are taught that quite often. Just like, hey, a reminder, it actually extends to the other side of the highway, so if you're chasing someone on the highway, you're good until this point. A lot of people don't realize that. And the detectives didn't, so they got really scared and said, just release him, get rid of him. No, we're going to stop. So everyone stop. When in fact they had an absolutely lawful arrest. I talked to one of the detectives after the fact, and they went, well, the president has to, there's a list, which is something a lot of these auditors think, is there's some presidential list that establishes which bases are actually protected under 18 U.S.C. 795, when in reality, Executive Order 10104 establishes that it doesn't have to be the president, actually be the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of the Army or whatever. And the Secretary of the Army has actually established which bases are protected through Army regulations, which is a weird thing that a lot of people don't understand because usually Army regulations wouldn't apply to civilians, with the exception of this one, which factors into this as a whole. It's a very complicated thing. And if you haven't looked into this, I completely understand the detectives not understanding. It's just very frustrating for me who, this is my backyard practically. I could have been a consultant for this. And the MPs knew. It's just the detectives were like, nope. So we had a good long talk after that. And I walked them through it, but it was a whole thing. Anyway, that's my rant.
Well, I mean, I think it's just really a thing. I guess to each their own. If somebody wants to push the push the line on it and see if what they can. I mean, I have done my fair share of military audits. Fortunately, I've never been arrested or charged with anything doing it, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. I mean, I'll tell you, when you first came out with your very first video about filming a restricted military base, and at first I was kind of like, what the hell, what do you mean you can't film that? I've filmed plenty of military bases, but yeah. I'll tell you what though, I watched it and I listened. And I kind of
more than most people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, I'm not one that's going to be just so quick to say like, screw this guy. What do you mean you can't? I can do it. No, I mean, I listened. And again, just because I never got arrested doing it doesn't mean that it couldn't. I mean, what if I went, back to Louisiana or somewhere and I was filming some military base and I got, I mean, it's kind of a high risk audit, and I guess it just depends on whether you want to take that risk. So, just like with Vandenberg, I didn't want to take that risk. To me, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
But
if you want to do it, my suggestion would be if you're not on federal, figure out where that federal property is. Don't be standing on the federal property. Point a camera towards the base, but don't turn it on. That's probably, if you want to do this audit, that's going to be the safest way to do it. I'm not saying that you should do it. I'm saying if you are determined to do this audit, have a dummy camera, and then have a GoPro facing you, right? And that way you can record any interaction with police, and you don't have it on your body because your body's going to be facing the base. So that's
kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for months. Like, if I were to do it, how would I do it? Because wouldn't that be fun? I probably know more about this than whoever's going to be responding to it, because I've, spent the last year just arguing with people on the internet and doing research and finding out about Area 51 and how the CIA has basically what they've written to be like, no, Google can do what they do, it's fine, and here's why. And I have too much work. I put too much work into this. And it's very frustrating because there's nothing at the end of this. There's no case law. There's nothing. I'm basically just in limbo waiting for either to be proven unconstitutional as applied to someone off base, or for someone to finally get convicted. And I've drunkenly debated, what if I was the person that got convicted? That would establish it. Yeah. But no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be a lot safer to stick into auditing, Church of Scientology.
Yeah, the Scientology. And also Scientology. I have no problem. See, the military thing hits kind of close to home because my job was security of the base. I had a lot of roles. One of them was Sergeant of the Guards, which meant that I was in charge of all the MPs stationed at the access control points. So the security of the base, when I was in that role, was very important to me. So this is something that is important to me, and it's entirely possible that I'm biased in ignoring factual stuff because of that. Keeping criminal ass with all the military bases being on higher alert after those workplace incidents taking place, that would probably be the murders, I imagine. Wouldn't that be enough of a deterrent for the audit? I don't think now is a good time to audit. I think there are some bases out there that are certainly going to be less receptive than ever. And that's what you're looking for in an audit, is to get a reaction. Now's the time. But if you're trying not to get arrested while auditing, it's a balance. It's a thing.
Yeah, it's all just dependent whether it's worth it to you. Or not maybe you personally, but whoever is doing it, whether they want to push that boundary or, I've done it before, and it's been a while. No, I take that back. I did one a few months ago. Well, it was the California Army National Guard.
That one, I don't know if 18 U.S.C. 795 applies to it. I don't know the relationship to National Guard units, so I won't tell you to stay away from those. But I don't think anyone else really is familiar with it either, because that, I feel like, would be state defense as opposed to national defense. Because 18 U.S.C. 795 is in the interest of national defense, but the National Guard belongs to the state, but they're used in national defense. I have no idea how that would go. I've thought about this and good question.
Yeah,
Tell you.
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, that was when the first time I audited that place. That was more than 4 years ago. Of course, a lot has changed in the auditing community since then. But that was my first, military base or whatnot that I did, and oh boy, they came out and they hassled me.
Oh yeah. Because there's obviously a concern of security, but at the end of the day, the question is, how much can they do? If this is a full-on, active duty, federal army installation, there are things they can do. But if this is just, an FBI building, as we discussed before, they're very limited to someone who is on a traditional public forum. And if I were to do an audit, when I did an audit, it was supposed to be a cop watch, ended with an audit. It was that video with a security guard telling me he was going to sue me if I used his face. Fortunately, there was rain on the...
I remember that.
See him anyway. I was on the other side of the sidewalk because my idea was, you can't even come close to establishing that I'm trespassing on any property if I'm on the other side of the street. But I'm still going to be able to film with a telephoto lens, which is something I tell auditors, right? Especially the ones that get arrested with obstruction. That's a huge problem for auditors. They think, well, I'm going to get real close to these, like during this cop watch. I'm going to get right into the action. No, you will get charged with obstruction. And officers have a lot of authority to move you pretty far back. This whole idea of 10, 15 feet, 21 feet, no.
It doesn't work.
That.
Yeah.
This idea that there needs to be crime scene tape. No, crime scene tape just acts as, it's just helpful. It's basically for trespassing. If there's a sign and you trespass, they don't need to warn you you're trespassing before you're charged with it. But if there's no sign and you trespass, they basically, whoever's in charge of that property has to say, hey, you're trespassing. And then if you don't leave, right? So if you wander onto a crime scene that's not marked with police tape, they have to tell you to leave. And then if you don't, it's trespassing. But if there's crime scene tape, if you cross the tape, you can just immediately get arrested for trespassing. That's where it's useful, but it's not required. So a lot of auditors think there has to be crime scene tape. A lot of them think that they can be within 15 to 21 feet. That's not true. If you're concerned about seeing the action where the police cannot hide what they're doing, get a telephoto lens. They're incredibly useful. You get a tripod, a telephoto lens, you can see everything for quite a distance. Before my camera was stolen, I had a telephoto lens that I bought, and I plan on using it at one of the protests, so I could do it from a distance and still get footage. If you're concerned about audio, get a parabolic dish microphone situation, right? So you can pick up stuff from a distance. And that way, there's no way that obstruction is going to even be an issue. There are things that you can do to still get the same results that aren't going to be criminal in nature. And then, which raises the question, are you doing what you're doing to try to become arrested so that you can file a civil lawsuit and get money? It's at that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that I see what you're saying. There are things that you can do where you can get your content, make a good video, and not put yourself in harm's way. I mean, personally, whether it results in a lawsuit or not, I don't want to get arrested.
Yeah.
Maybe, if the case gets thrown out, I can sue later, blah, blah, blah. But even so, how many years are you going to be tied up in court on a civil lawsuit? I mean, and in the end, what are you going to get? To me, I'd rather just do the audit or cop watch or whatever the hell it is, get your footage, get your content, whether there's an interaction or not, and go home or go to the next one or whatever. I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to walk down that road or go down that road again.
Same. Like if this were me, it'd be like, oh, okay, the police are telling me to do something. I'm going to leave, and then I can file a complaint, listing all the reasons why I shouldn't have had to.
Yeah. Yeah, do a follow-up, make a follow-up video and say, hey, this cop did blah, 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 blah. I went and made a complaint, and this is what they did, or this is what they didn't do. Yeah. I think that's better than getting arrested and having to bail out or, go to court. And, yeah, screw that. It's not worth it to me. But, to some people, maybe they feel that's what they need to do to prove a point or whatever.
Yeah.
Teach their own.
I mean, that's their various things. Keeping it criminal. Yes, yes. We should do a breakdown of something. Absolutely. Now, he mentioned Glick versus Cuniff, which is a ruling about filming the police, which happened in the is that my area? I feel like that's my area, in my neck of the woods, in the Northwest. But I have a quote for you folks. Concerning that the officers were employing excessive force to effect the arrest, Glick stopped roughly 10 feet away and began recording video footage of the arrest on his cell phone. So if that does come from Glick versus Cuniff, it'd probably be in relation to that somehow. It's a whole thing. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things where people are like, oh, it's 10 feet, where it comes from a case that isn't actually 10 feet. It's just that's like a suggestion for a certain situation. Or you can only be detained for 15 minutes. That's not true. The case that they got that from specifically states, or maybe 2 hours would be reasonable, right? Depending on the situation. There's a lot of misunderstanding regarding case law, I think, is where a lot of people get mistaken.
Get confused. And
it's easy to get mistaken on case law, but it helps to reach out to people outside of the auditing community. A lot of the auditing community has become an echo chamber for some of these organizations, these groups, and they're just repeating the same thing. We talked about that, again, to bring it up a second time, the post office stuff. Poster 7 actually states that your filming can be restricted. But the auditing community, certain members of them, had been repeating, like, no, it doesn't say that at all. But they never actually looked at it, right? It is often a great idea to seek help outside of your group and sort of check their opinion on it and sort of fact check it. That's how I actually write a lot of my scripts for my videos, is I'll see something and I'll write some comments, and I'll just have discussions and arguments with people. And then the research I do for those discussions and arguments are what I put into my script. And that's how I do a lot of my research, because otherwise there are things I would not have missed, I would not have considered. So, all right, you learn a lot from that, from getting into arguments with strangers on the internet, weirdly.
Yeah, and I think there's also another problem that you run into with certain people is that they've got it in their mind that they're right about something. Like, well, I've been filming the lobby of the post office. They can't make me leave. You know what I mean? And they have it. They've convinced themselves that they can do it. So no matter what you show them, they say, "Well, hey, look at this where it says this," and da 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 da. Oh no, that's not what it means, or whatever. Certain people have just convinced themselves that they can do it because they want to do it and they want to think they can get away with it and no one can do anything about it. And yeah, maybe. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Blue. I mean, I've filmed in the lobby of plenty of post offices. I'm guilty. I've done it.
Yeah.
Did I get away with it? Yes. But does that mean that? I mean, look at Pink Camera Magic. I mean, she got arrested for filming in the lobby of a post office, and it was after she had already left. I mean, she was out on the street, on the sidewalk, and they arrested her. Yeah. So I mean, and she was convicted of it. I mean, I'm not trying to say she did anything wrong, but I mean, it's just. I mean, yeah, maybe it's a constitutional issue. I don't know, but I mean, it's just, you could probably do it. You could probably get away with it. But could you get arrested? Could you get convicted? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get a reaction, see what your action is, what you can do is you can contact the postmaster of that area in an email, right? Say, hey, it wouldn't be possible to document this for whatever at some point during like this month or this week, if that's too broad. And if they say, yeah, that's fine, print out that email and carry it with you. And that should help. It's not a perfect situation. Similarly, with military installations, if you get the commander's permission, if you contact the public affairs office, you can generally get permission to film a military installation. They might say, no, you can't film that part, you can't film this part, this is where we usually allow filming. You can do that. And then, maybe the public affairs office doesn't alert the military police, and then that's your legal defense. Even if you do get arrested, like nothing's going to come of it because you had permission. As long as you get it written down, you're probably going to be okay. So if you want to test people's reactions, it doesn't hurt to go sometimes way above their heads, and then hope like, oh, maybe they don't know I'm coming, and then you'll still get that reaction, but your defense will be much more defendable, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, and I mean, like, and too, when it comes to stuff like that, I mean, I remember. I mean, this is not an audit, but I remember what year was it? I think it was 2013 or 14. Anyways, I went to Korea. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine from Hawaii who was there basically staying with his girlfriend whose parents were in the Army and they were stationed there. They had a place off base and anyway in Seoul. But while I was there, we took a tour, a DMZ tour of the Korean there, the military zone.
Oh, nice.
It was, it's an all-day thing, but they take you from, Seoul, you get on a bus and they drive you, And I was shocked about how liberal they were when it came to recording. You know, I mean, it was really, and keep in mind too, this is before I was an auditor. This was, you know, even when they took us inside the, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the JSA, you know,
Yep.
where you see the blue buildings, and they're, you know, half's on the North Korean side and half's on the South Korean side.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And for the most part, I mean, it was pretty much, there was only a few times where they told us, like, okay, right here, you know, please no. But for the most part, like in JSA, I mean, I got pictures of me, you know, like, you know, standing, you know, on the South Korean side. Right behind me is North Korea, and you see the North Korean soldier with his binoculars, and
yep.
you know, I mean,
Man.
it was so. Yeah, I mean, that's an example right there where, I mean, yeah, you can, you know, obviously they allow it, but let's say I went there and I showed up at the entrance to the, you know, the southern entrance of the demilitarized zone and started recording. I mean, you know, would they have a problem with it? I'm sure, probably. you know?
I would not test that there. Oh no.
So yeah, I mean, it's just, but yeah, I mean, it's all about, yeah. I mean, if you go through the proper channels, but I also see too, you know, when it comes to an audit, you know, an audit is a test.
Yep.
You know, you're testing, like, hey, you know, I know I can do this, or I believe I can do this, so I'm going to do it, and let's see how they react to it. So I mean, I see both sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, and speaking of audits too, you know, I've audited the Scientology ideal org in Seattle, your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I tried. For those of you who don't know, when I was doing a little bit of traveling up the West Coast, I ended up in a former neck of the woods that I knew NastyNathanial had been in quite frequently. I was like, hey, we should go audit one of the Scientology buildings. He was not in the area though, unfortunately. But one of these days in Seattle.
Yeah, well, I am actually planning on coming up there, you know, after the holidays. You know, I was going to come up earlier, but then I decided I'd probably be better to wait till after the holidays.
Yeah.
So we should definitely get together.
Yeah. No, I'm down. Like I'll do an audit, sure. I'll try not to get too intense.
You know, and yeah, exactly. And you know, too, I just want to comment on this before I forget. You know, when you were covering the protests up there, yeah, I give you props for that. I mean, you've had a lot of balls to do that.
It was also very stupid. I didn't mean to do that by myself. I had a friend that was supposed to go with me. It's for this, he's former infantry, great guy, real calm. I'm like, this guy will be perfect, right? He doesn't know anything about the laws, but he knows how not to be dumb in this kind of situation. And his entire job was going to be to pull me back because I didn't know how I would react to this. And it turns out I didn't react well, and I should have had him there, and I didn't. I had him for a different one where there was no action, but it would have been. He went on his own to a different one with someone else, and then I was like, "Hey, do you still want to, go with me after I've been beaten up?" He went, "No, I had my own experience. I don't think we should keep going down this road." And I was like, "Yeah, no, you're right." And then my camera got stolen. I decided, okay, I'm done. I'm done dealing with them. And they weren't the ones that stole my camera. They were the ones who initially stole some cameras I was wearing. I ripped them right off my body. And I was just so frustrated with all of that. I'm like, you know what? What am I going to gain from this? I know what they're doing. I know they're not going to be happy. It's going to be more of the same, just a smaller amount, because the numbers have been dwindling as they get arrested, I assume, as people sort of get tired of it. But as ballsy as
people got to go back to work.
yeah, as ballsy it was also incredibly stupid. Which is one of the things I said. I still have that audio recording, which I should probably release, because I had an audio device on me as well. But the first time someone grabbed me, I guess it got knocked. They must have hit the stop button. But you can hear someone grab me, and I'm like, get off me, right? which is a shame because that's right when stuff started to get interesting. So, yeah.
No, I gotta say, I was scared for you.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Like, oh, I had such good footage. I had a camera on my back. I had a camera on my front, and they took them both. And I'm so glad I got footage of them, dragging me down because at least there's something. But now, like, nothing I say about it and my experience can be proven because someone else has the cameras. Always sees me getting attacked. We don't know that I wasn't being incredibly stupid beforehand. I mean, being there in the first place was incredibly stupid. But right before I was dragged down, I was getting kicked in the back, and I turned around and said, "Hey, you need to stop." I put out the knife hand and everything, stop, and I got sprayed in the face for it. But yeah, it was a thing. It was stupid. It was. I've made plans on how I would do this in the future. I've bought better gear. And I would use a telephoto lens. My whole thing in that one was I'd been gently assaulted at a previous protest, and I wanted to see if I wore the same thing and did the same thing, if it would happen again. If this was a one-time incident, or these people were really becoming more and more aggressive. And I found out they were getting much more aggressive than I expected, much more than anticipated. And I didn't expect it to jump because I knew that it was escalating in aggressiveness. I did not expect it to jump to where it was that quickly from my initial assault. So
the first one you went to was pretty peaceful.
The first one I went to, I mean, it was the occupation of Cal Anderson Park. It was 24-hour occupation, 7 days a week. They had set up food stands and like medical stations, and it was just a crowd with their signs, and they had people with megaphones, saying things and airing their grievances, and a lot of them were providing information that was not accurate, but it was fine, whatever. And I was amazed, and people were like thanking me, and they're like, "Hey, thanks for coming here and documenting this. This is such a huge deal. Like, look at us making a difference." Like, "Hey, you want some free food? Like, I got hot dogs over here." Someone had like a burrito stand I got on film, and there was a live band, and this was the start of the Chop Chaz zone. This was what it was before it became that. And so they were protesting. They did this for, I think, a couple weeks. And I was there for one of the nights. And it was an incredible experience. And I was tickled pink. And I was like, well, they're not technically accurate with what they're saying about the police. Some of the stories are way out of context. But wow, what an interesting community. Like I've never seen anything like this. This is a big deal. And then they created the Chop Chaz area. And I went there. And it was sort of like the same thing, but everyone seemed just kind of unhappy about it. Like, people were definitely like, "Who are you now?" Like, they weren't congratulating me on showing up and like patting me on the back. They're like, "Who are you? What do you want here?" There were a couple people that were like that. They were very concerned. And I went because I had heard that people with cameras were being stopped at the checkpoints because they had set up checkpoints. People with guns were at the checkpoints. Very friendly people. I talked to some of them. Incredibly friendly people. Doesn't mean everyone.
So protesters then.
Yeah, like the protesters set up checkpoints for the Chop. For the occupied zone.
Oh, wow.
Not every checkpoint had one, like the main ones did, and the people I talked to were just so incredibly friendly. But I imagine that would have changed if I had been like, "I'm actually a police officer," or was, or whatever. I'm sure they would have been happy. There were stories that came out of there of people. I think there was a video that came out. Some guy had a pen. It was like an animal veterinarian pen, and some people thought that it was a Blue Lives flag pen, and they beat him up. I think there's video of that. So like it was very lawless. Everyone's like, "Hey, drugs, weed, alcohol, like we're having a good time," but there were no rules. And if a small group of people thought, "We don't like this guy," you're getting beaten up, and mob mentality sets in, and everyone just assumes that the people beating you up are correct, right? And so that's what it sort of became. Apparently around the nighttime. I never went at night. Apparently, it was very, it was hit or miss. It was generally good, but occasionally you'd find groups of people that were using this to their advantage to just engage in some really nasty stuff. And that became a bigger and bigger and bigger problem until the police were like, "Oh no, there's a lot of we're getting a lot of police calls, but we're not allowed to show up," and it's a whole thing, and they shut it down. And that's when the protests got sort of taken over by Antifa, where they're like, "Okay, cool, everyone, let's show up. This is no longer BLM. This isn't BLM." And they took over, and it became incredibly violent. it black bloc anarchists, and it was a whole. I was tracking them through.
So,
I can't even go on my Twitter anymore. It makes me too angry.
So the police weren't showing up?
They were, but they weren't allowed in. They'd show up, and people were like, no, you can't come in here. You're the police. You're not allowed here. There was a relative.
How does that work, though? I mean,
because the police.
I think it's fascinating.
Because the governor was like, let them do their thing. It'll either burn out, it'll buy us time. COVID's happening, so it's not like the businesses are really being affected. We don't really lose anything here, except for the people who lived in that area. Who was like, it's a 24-hour party, constantly. So the people who live there, like, I just want to sleep, man. Stop. And so I think the city didn't really know what to do. And they went, I think we can either buy time, we can let them burn themselves out, we can give this opportunity, and then if nothing happens, if nothing is accomplished, we can say we give it a shot and, we did everything that we could. There was a strategy there. I don't think it panned out the way they wanted it to. They certainly didn't expect this to last as long as it has. I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it was a whole thing. But there's an incident where someone was shot, and the police arrived to escort the medics, the medical personnel into the area, and they're being shouted at. And half the people were saying, "We don't want you here. Get out of here. Like, this isn't your area. You're not allowed here." And the other half are shouting, "Hey, he's not here anymore. He got transported. Someone drove him to the hospital." But of course, the police. There's all this shouting on the camera. You can hear people saying he's at the hospital. But I think the camera is a little bit closer to those people. There are certainly people saying, "Get out of here. We don't want you here." And the police are like, "We're not welcome here. This is a dangerous area. The medics will not treat someone in a hostile area." And this is pretty universal, right? Medical personnel, firefighters, whoever, will not do what they're being paid to do until the police have secured the scene. So firefighters will not generally work under gunfire. If there's an active shooter in a burning building, the firefighters are like, well, let it burn. The police will take care of the active shooter. And that's a very extreme example. But like an ambulance crew, EMTs, they will not go into an area that is dangerous for the most part, with very few exceptions. And those exceptions are made on decisions, personal decisions, as opposed to policy and department decisions. So this was an issue, and a lot of people were like, oh, the police just, they didn't show up because they didn't want to, because people were telling them that was a hospital. But in reality, I think it was just a very confusing situation, and the police felt like it would be dangerous to actually enter. So it was a whole thing, and it became a pretty big problem. And eventually the city's like, nope, we're removing your barricades, everyone out. Cal Anderson Park was closed, and they said it was closed for ages. There's still people camped there, and every once in a while, like every couple months, the police will come through and like remove all the tents, and people are like, oh, they're sweeping illegal searches. Well, no, because you're actually camped there illegally, but signs are posted everywhere. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the law that's going on here. That's very frustrating to me. Because, like, for example, Portland. Now you got me in a rant. In Portland, people are like, oh, secret police. No, those are federal law enforcement officers. We just don't see them very often because they aren't usually used for this. But this is absolutely within their jurisdiction to protect a federal courthouse. Right? It's just that this isn't common. And so people were making up a lot of things about the Portland Federal Police that were not true, and everyone's just believing it because they don't know better. And I'm sitting here like, no, stop. That's not accurate. That's not how this works. They're not hiding their names. They don't wear their names. They have badge numbers. Like, that's, no. But it was, there's a whole, like, oh, they're targeting journalists. No, the journalists are on the front lines getting the best pictures on the front lines. In many places, not every place, but many places, journalists have to obey orders to disperse just like everyone else. So when the orders to disperse are given, and they stay in the front and keep taking pictures, and the rubber bullets and pepper balls start flying, and they get hit, they go, I'm being targeted. When in reality, it's probably not the case. It's just that you're literally in the front, where everyone's getting hit. The police aren't going to avoid you just because you have a camera. As far as they're concerned, you're part of it. You were told to leave, and you didn't. So it's a whole thing that I could rant about for hours, but won't. I'm cutting myself off.
Well, no, I think it's really interesting because, like, for example, when you were mentioning how they basically occupied certain areas, I mean, what if it was a situation like somebody like you, let's say you got attacked, and you're getting the shit kicked out of you.
I wouldn't know what that's like.
The police show up. Will they just stop at the checkpoint? And
I mean, if they can see it, they might move in. But if they can't see it, they're probably like, so okay. I never reported the attack during the protest, because I knew that if the police moved in, things would escalate to violence for everyone. You know, like the protesters aren't going to tolerate the police. The police were actually, they were in the area. They were just a few blocks down, just sort of standing by in case like things were lit on fire. I knew that going in alone, I probably wasn't going to have a police response to protect me. And that was an incredibly dangerous and stupid idea. But I had a point to prove, and I proved it. Oh boy, I proved it.
Oh, you got a lot of balls. Yeah, no, I give you credit. I mean,
and people very meanly call me out, like, what a moron. They say worse language than that. Like, this guy's such an idiot. You know, yeah, it was, and I would never recommend that anyone else do this. But I made a conscious decision, knowing the risks, and it was incredibly stupid. And I've learned from it, and now I have other plans if I want to ever do anything anywhere near similar to that. But yeah, in Seattle, the police have been sort of not getting super involved, which is interesting because they absolutely can. If you're occupying an intersection, that's an unlawful assembly, right? You're committing a crime, therefore it's not a peaceable assembly as permitted by the First Amendment. Now, if you want to do this as a protest, you can get an event permit or a parade permit, but Seattle's not issuing those right now because of COVID. So I know that these assemblies are unlawful. And when the police give orders to disperse, a lot of people claim, oh, they're ordering us to disperse for nothing. Like, no, it's because you're literally blocking an entire intersection for an entire night, right? But however, the police are aware of this, and so they tell all the ambulances that might be going through there and all the traffic, hey, just avoid this area. They send out text messages and tweets.
They're just choosing not to act on it.
Yeah, generally, yeah, they're choosing. They're aware of it. They're prepared for it, but they're choosing not to act. To be like, hey, like Seattle and Portland are very big on letting people voice their concerns, which is cool. I think there's a limit to what should be acceptable, but yeah, generally, if you're gonna block an intersection like that, it's unlawful because what if an ambulance has to go through? What if this has to go through? And if you apply for the permit, then it gives the city a few days to put out in newspapers or wherever, hey, avoid this area. For example, if you're driving your pregnant wife to the hospital. There was an incident where there was a vegan march and they were blocking a roadway, and there's this video of this guy in the front saying, my wife is giving birth right now in my back seat. I need to get her to a hospital. You need to move. And they're just not listening to him. If they had applied for a permit to block that street, then that information would have been put out so he wouldn't have maybe taken that road and gotten stuck in that situation. So this comes down to another First Amendment thing where, yeah, you have the right to protest, but there are limits on it. There can be time, place, and manner restrictions on First Amendment protected activities, as long as they are content neutral, serve a significant government interest, and leave ample open alternatives for communication. That Supreme Court has ruled on that. That comes from 2 different Supreme Court cases. I remember one. I don't remember the other. Do I remember both? No. Supreme Court ruled there can be exceptions. So a lot of this, like, for those of you who are in a protest and you think the police are just like, oh, they're breaking us up, they're telling us to leave for no reason, ask yourself, are you standing in the middle of a street? Then that's probably the reason, because you don't have the constitutional right to do that. And that's one of the things with my filming and going there and exercising my constitutional right to film is, oh, you're exercising your First Amendment rights, I'm going to do that the same. I'm also exercising First Amendment right. If you're going to respect yours, if I'm supposed to respect yours, are you going to respect mine? And the answer is not as much as I would have liked. Some did. The older individuals in the crowd, and often the African Americans in the crowd, understood. People who had been through this before, people who had maybe been through civil rights in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They had been through these protests before, and they knew a thing or two. They were often the ones that stepped in. I think I got rescued. I don't think any white people rescued me. I think it was all African Americans, and I'm incredibly grateful to them for that. But it's also really disappointing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they know how this works because they've had to go through it before. And you have all these young people that they don't know how this whole thing works. They've never experienced this. Many of them, weirdly, in Seattle are white. So where are all the black people? This is Black Lives Matter. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, as a white person, protest for the community, for the sake of community that you may not be a member of. But it certainly, like, once the crowd started turning white, that's when Antifa started to become a presence. So the whiter the protest got, the more dangerous they ended up being. Like, that was the weird sort of transition, is you knew a protest was going to be dangerous based on how many white people were there. It's weird. And I don't know if that was unique to Seattle, but that is what I observed, and it was true every single time. It's weird.
Yeah, that is a strange. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean it's it's scary. Like I said, I know I keep repeating myself, but I give you a lot of you got a lot of balls for. I give you a lot of credit for going in there and because I mean it's really even like what was going on in L.A. I mean when the protests started
Oh, yeah.
getting active. By that time I had already left L.A. I was no longer living in Los Angeles, but. I mean, some people some auditors that I know got arrested, going down there, and it's that, and too, it's not just getting arrested, but it's that, you kind of, talked about it earlier. It's that mob mentality, when you
It's dangerous.
It's like if I go into a group like that, and I'm just filming, doing my thing, NastyNathanial, blah, blah, and somebody doesn't like it, and they start talking shit and raising their voice, and maybe they push me, maybe they assault me, then another one jumps in, and then everyone else that jumps in, they don't know what the hell's going on. All they see is their homeboys kicking the shit out of this white guy, or and then it becomes it becomes a free for all.
It's incredibly dangerous. My mentality, I've experienced it, and I've struggled to act against it. I don't care who you are susceptible to it. And if you're not actively looking out for it, here's a fun little protest thing. I don't like the Proud Boys. I don't like neo-Nazis. I don't like the KKK. In fact, I'm very much against all those organizations. I don't like Antifa either, against that organization. If I had to pick Antifa or the white supremacy groups, I would pick Antifa. At least I agree with what they're fighting for. I just don't agree with the method. Well, not all of what they're fighting for. I just don't agree with their methods. But I'm certainly against white supremacy and all that nonsense. But
absolutely,
people get upset because like, why are the police protecting the Proud Boys? And one of the reasons is, and I use the Proud Boys because it's a more recent example. One of the reasons is because the Proud Boys are more organized. Antifa is by definition and by design disorganized. A lot of them don't know who each other are. They organize quickly, and they jump on a spot with very little planning. They're all just ready to go, like, oh, there's a thing happening, go. Proud Boys plan. They know who each other are. They're not afraid to say who they are, which isn't always a great idea for them. But what they do is they apply for a permit to protest. Antifa does not, because they don't want their moves anticipated. Generally, you need like 3 days minimum. In an emergency situation, you need like 3 days to get permission for that permit. Antifa will not request that. I've never seen them request it because they want.
That's interesting.
They want it to be a surprise. They want it to show up and be unexpected. The Proud Boys do not. They plan, and one of the things they do is they request a police presence. The police cannot decline to show up to an event based on the content of the message being conveyed at the event. If the KKK wants a police escort for their march, they'll get a police escort. The police might not be happy about it. Maybe some are. I'd like to think that that's not the case. I know a lot of people think that they are. That is the case. I certainly hope not. If you're a police officer and you support the KKK, you can leave right now, right? Like just go. But they'll protect them from whatever. People get very set. Like, why would you protect them? Because they have to. That's their job. They can't make the determination that they're not going to based on the content of the message. Just BLM often doesn't. They don't like the police in many cases, so they might not request it. I've seen them do it. I've seen them not do it. Antifa will not. So that's one of the big things you see. The other really cool thing, and not that Proud Boys are cool, but their planning is really interesting, is I've seen videos in which they had basically, it was like a military structure. They had what you might call a sergeant, right, in charge of 5 people. And they'd all be in a small group as part of a much larger group. And that sergeant, I don't know what they're actually called. That's just going to be my term for it. The sergeant's entire job is to basically pull people back who want to start trouble so that their protest isn't shut down because of violence. His entire job is to say, hey, don't succumb to the mob mentality. We're here for a purpose. We're going to get a message across. Our message isn't terribly popular. So my job is to calm you down. And the entire protest, in some of these protests, is made up of these small little organized groups. where there is someone whose specific job is to do that. That is amazing strategy to prevent your protests from being shut down. It's just a shame that it's the Proud Boys is using it and not someone like BLM. BLM can absolutely benefit from this. It's just that they think that their message is so morally acceptable that they don't need to do that, because why would they need to do that when they're right? Whereas, you know, Proud Boys, like, we know that people are going to disagree with us, so we have to be more careful. BLM could learn from that. I'm not saying they should be more like Proud Boys, but when it comes to protesting properly within the law, the Proud Boys, the KKK, white supremacy organizations, they kind of have it figured out. Westboro Baptist Church, I wish bad things upon them, but they make most of their money from from winning civil suits for people stopping them from protesting with their signs and saying terrible things on traditional public forums. That's basically how they support their organizations, through lawsuits. It's nuts, but they know,
which is crazy in itself.
Yeah, because they know that people are against them, so they learn how to work within the system to accomplish their goals. Whereas BLM, that's not something they feel they need to do, and Antifa actively rejects that idea. It's a really fascinating thing, but that's, I mean, I could make an entire video about that.
You should. That'd be really interesting.
I'll get some like chess pieces. Explain police tactics for riot control. There's some really cool tactics. Oh, one of these days, I have it on my list of things. It's just that Jeremy Dewitt has sort of dominated my channel, but it's a whole thing.
Well, like I said earlier, Jeremy Dewitt, you know, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Every time I'm like, all right, we're backing down, like something new comes, I'm like, right, like I'm excited to do it, but like, I want to, you know, what, someday he's going to be gone. I have to have like more to my channel than just him. I already made a musical. I will, after the case is done, after all this stuff. I'm planning on doing a second musical. I even have a bit with some rapping, laying down some beats and some bars. Someone earlier wanted to discuss who's running the Jeremy Dewitt website like an hour ago, and we were in such a groove. It is believed to be Jennifer, with a lot of influence from Jeremy, but it has not been officially confirmed. And with that, that's basically all I really know about it.
Which is it's very strange in itself.
It's so weird.
You know,
50 cents. I'm writing that down. DCM, I'm writing. You know what? I just want to like give you your money back because that was so good. 50 cent. That's a rapper name. I always wanted my rapper name to be Papa Squat, like Papa Roach, but Papa Squat. You know, like, hey, go Papa Squat over there, but spelled P-A-P-A. That's what I always wanted, but it's not.
Well, you could use the title "Shakin' Bacon" and make it a disco album.
Oh, I might have to do that. I thought about doing a Christmas album just for fun. Oh, speaking of albums, and nothing related to that, you know, if I was making an album, I'd probably want to sell it. But I'm not selling an album, but I am selling stuff out of a merch store on Etsy. If you go to Etsy and look up Sergeant Blue Bacon, I don't know if Rennie can drop a link to it there. I know we've been talking forever. She might not still be here. I have some fun stuff. I got a couple T-shirts. I got a sticker. There is a postcard with the Orange County Correctional Facility that says "Wish you were here," which I'm kind of proud of.
Ooh, I might have to pick it up.
I know, and the shipping is weirdly expensive. I haven't been able to like drop it down. Yeah, do you mind putting my Etsy link? I use Etsy because I can connect other manufacturers to it and sell through there. I know it's fine. It works though. I have another T-shirt that I'm planning on making. It's going to be a WWE thing in reference to his appearance on WWE, but he's going to be throwing a chair, which I'm excited to draw up the concept art. There's going to be there's some things I can't discuss yet. There's top secret. But if you look at it and you don't see anything you like, check in every couple weeks. Things will be updated. The stuff's only going to be up for 4 months at a time. If it's popular, I'll re-up it. But there is a time limit for some of this stuff. So.
Well, you know what? People have mentioned to me about, you know, why don't you make some NastyNathanial T-shirts? And it's something I think would be fun to do, and I probably will. You know,
do it.
I just haven't gotten around to doing it, but you know, one of those things, you know. But you know, there's a channel that I follow. I don't know if you've heard of Doug DeMuro. He's like Jay Leno. He's a car guy, you know, and he has a
That
car
sounds
channel.
very familiar.
Yeah, he used to write for Hemmings Motor News, and he's a real big car buff, and he does car review videos. But he also has another thing that he does called More Doug DeMuro, where he kind of branches off and does, you know, other things. You know, I mean, he's mainly known for being a car guy. But anyways, the reason I brought him up was because he was talking about, you know, kind of what I just said. You know, everybody kept telling him, you know, why don't you make T-shirts? You know, I mean, you blah, 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 you make a killing. And he was like, yeah, but, you know, everybody does that. And so he made these little Doug DeMuro postcards. And he said, you know, if you want one that he would autograph. And he said, well, if you want one that's signed by me, it's $35. If you want one that's personally signed, like to Brew Bacon from Doug DeMuro, it's $50. And he's like, I know what everybody's going to say. Why do they cost so much? And well, first of all, he said the reason he decided to do that was because he wanted to do something different. You know, he's like, I'm always trying to think outside the box. And I thought, well, you know, everybody does T-shirts. I'll do this. But two, he said the reason why he priced them so high was he's like, I don't want to have to be signing a bunch of these things. So I'm kind of hoping that not very many people will buy them because they cost too much.
It's smart.
And I wanted to ask your opinion on something. I'm not saying I will do this, but I'm kind of like that way too. You know, just like with you know, auditing Scientology and Chick-fil-A. You know, I'm kind of thinking, I try to think of things that are different and not the norm. And I thought, you know what? You know, I was thinking like maybe I could do something like. For example, like Moral Bay. That's probably one of my most well-known audits. You know, that's my, I don't know if you want to call it a landmark audit or whatever. It's one of the audits that I'm most known for, is Moral Bay. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I could, like, auction off the T-shirt that I was wearing when I got slammed to the ground by the Moral Bay Chief of Police.
Nice.
You know, I'm not saying I am going to do that. I just thought, you know, maybe that'd be it. Maybe I could, you know, autograph it. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too self-absorbed now. But, yeah, I was just trying to think of something different. And I thought, well, I don't know, maybe, you know, the only thing is if I did something like that, you know, other people would probably start doing it. And then there'd be, like, this whole, like, community of, like, First Amendment auditor memorabilia, you know. So, you know, the shirt that James Freeman was wearing when he got arrested outside of Fort Huachuca. So,
nice. Yes.
So I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, I like it. I've thought about doing something similar. I don't ship for my own residence because that way I don't have to deal with all the orders. It's been done automatically for me. But I have thought about doing something. So I'm about to build a studio where I have a desk and like everything. I can control a bunch of things like camera angles and whatnot. And some of you might be like, your T-shirts are, you know, over $20. What the heck? It's because it funds my my studio and whatnot. One of the things I want to do is when we do phone calls like this, I found a little device where you can hook up like physical phones. And so I want to buy like these old-fashioned phones, bring it out, and be like, all right, it's time for people to call in. So I'll be like talking on this old like rotary dial phone, and then after that I can sign it, auction it off for charity, and then donate that money to the charity of choice, which I think would be a lot of fun. So I've thought about doing similar stuff to that, where like things that you are known for, if I become known for that, you know, you sell it as like, oh, here's the gear. I feel like someone would appreciate that, would definitely want like, oh, I want that shirt, yeah.
Yeah, there'd probably be somebody, you know. Like, I remember watching a thing about people who collected like serial killer memorabilia, you know.
It's
because, you know,
funny.
you're doing the thing about the Green River Killer.
It's funny you bring that up because I just got another file in my public records request on the Green River Killer information, and unfortunately it's not open, like literally just now. So I don't know what it is yet.
Gary Ridgway.
Well, I mean, I've gotten some really cool stuff from that. I got, you know, his polygraph results. I have crime scene sketches of like where the bodies were and how they were angled. I've done a lot of research into Gary Ridgway. I've never seen this information. I know someone has it. Someone has before me requested and received every single bit of information you can get. and he sells it for like $20 a CD. And I don't know how many CDs and what's on it. It's not organized. So I had to be spending like hundreds of dollars to get all this information instead of waiting for King County to get it to me. But it's kind of fun, just like every once in a while they go, oh, here's another thing. I go, oh, what is it? It's like getting a little present. And that way it's less like work, going through all this stuff, and more like, oh, what do we got? So let's let me just see what we got. And by the way,
That's interesting.
wondering when that's all going to happen. This spring and summer. Hopefully COVID will be dying down. The vaccines are coming out, and I'll be able to do more with that. I was supposed to start last summer, but obviously things were getting shut down. 12/16. That's today. There's a problem serving the requested page, so maybe it's not fully working. Well, I guess we don't get to find out today.
Something that I'd like to do when I come back up there, and of course, time's always a factor, but something that, we could even maybe possibly do something like this together, I've always been really fascinated with the case of Ted Bundy, Theodore Robert Bundy.
Oh, yeah.
He was from Seattle, and I'd like to go to some of the room that or the apartment that he rented, and maybe some of the murder sites, where he picked up some of the girls that he ended up.
It's so weird. I've been to a lot of the sites where people either went missing or were found, and it's so weird. It's like the bridge across Green River. The name of the bridge I've forgotten, but standing there and seeing the exact, basically, bit of dirt that a body got caught on. Like, it's still that you can. I'm just like, oh, there it is, right there. That's where the first body was found. He walked up that path right there. Oh, 3 more were found over there. It's so weird. It's just like I went to his house. I stood outside his house and just looked at it and went, I kind of want to buy that house, but it's not on the market. So unfortunately, I can't. I will if it goes on the market and I have the money to put down on a house. I'm buying it. 100%. I'm gonna rent that puppy out. Airbnb.
Yeah, give tours.
That's what I'm saying. Like, someone just lives there, like it's a regular home. Like, bro, he killed like 20 people in there.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing with me because I'm a true crime guy, and yeah. I remember the first time I went to the Menendez brothers murder mansion in Beverly Hills.
Oh yeah.
The 2 brothers that killed their parents. It looks. It's still painted white. It still looks just like it did. When you see those old archive news reports, where the police and stuff are outside the house. They took the gate down. Other than that, it looks the same. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking inside, beyond those doors, is where these 2 brothers, shotgun murdered their parents.
Yeah.
And it's just you're looking right at it. I know some people, they probably think that's morbid or whatnot, but I think it's interesting.
I'm weirdly fascinated by it. I listen to the podcast and I watch various YouTube channels about it, and I just, having been involved in, not serial killer murder stuff, but being familiar with the process of hunting this stuff down, absolutely fascinates me. There's a Netflix, I want to say show. It's like a little mini series called "Don't F with Cats on the Internet," and that I loved. If you've never seen it, it's basically this guy was killing cats on the internet, and this group of people banded together and were trying to find him, and they found him. And they were trying to get the attention of the police, like, hey, there's this guy. And the police was like, yeah, okay, whatever, we're busy, whatever your nonsense is, we don't really care. And then he moved on to murdering people, and the police found out and got him within 3 days. And so it was really fascinating seeing what you can do with police resources, and then what the civilians can do with civilian resources, and the difference in how much effort and time it takes. And if that's something that is interesting to you, I recommend checking it out. It's a very well done documentary. It's really fascinating when you approach it okay, how quickly can police do it with all their resources? How quickly can this be done without the resources? And there's the difference is enormous, and it's so fascinating to watch sort of the process of the civilians doing it, and how well they do it, and how lucky they get in some instances.
Yeah, I know it is. I mean, there's a case here in my area out of here on the Central Coast out of San Luis Obispo of a guy, the case of Kristen Smart. That girl. She was a Cal Poly student. She was going to Cal Poly San Luis, and she went missing. This was in 1995, and pretty much from the beginning, there's only been one suspect, and it's a guy named Paul Flores, who basically it's everyone pretty much, like the law enforcement pretty much knows he did it, or they believe he did it. They don't have enough evidence.
Fully...
they've never been able to get an indictment against him. But there's been some renewed interest in it. Like recently, 48 Hours just did a thing on it. And, there's also, San Luis Obispo County, when they got their new sheriff, Ian Parkinson, he took a personal interest in it. And who knows, maybe that'd be something that you'd probably find interesting too. Kristen Smart, that.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, I've seen, I don't know if I've ever watched the videos, but they keep popping up on my recommended, like, watch this for the interview of this person.
Oh, it's right up your alley. Right up your alley. I remember when all that stuff was going on. I remember the main suspect, Paul Flores. I remember bumping into him at a 7-Eleven.
Really?
And I mean, this was like I said, this was years ago before I was an auditor. Now I probably would have whipped out my phone and recorded it. But he definitely was not happy when I mentioned his name. I said, "Hey, are you Paul Flores?" And he,
great.
Quickly forgot about his Slurpee and left. But
yeah, I bet.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's a really I mean, true crime is just fascinating. Just the cases and the ones that get solved, the ones that don't, the ones like shit. Like, God, we could spend days talking about this, but ones like Zodiac Killer.
Well, they just broke one of the codes.
Oh yeah.
380 cipher, I think. Basically.
Oh, they broke another one.
Yeah, it basically says. I'm not scared of death because I'll have people waiting for me in heaven. Like I've made my own servants. But I think he's alluding to the people he's killed, and by killing them, they become his servants in the afterlife. It's very weird. It really gives some insight into the way his brain works, unless he was just saying that to get a reaction.
Wow, no, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, and that guy, if he's still alive, would be pretty old.
He'd be pretty old. It's possible alive.
One, this is kind of, and I don't want to start going on and on about this because like I said, we can probably talk about this for days. But I mean, I'll tell you one. This is up in your neck of the woods, Pacific Northwest, unsolved. DB Cooper.
Yes, I love DB Cooper.
Yeah, I mean,
I've been tempted to go out and do a video on it. So I'm in that area. Like it's a reasonable drive. A few hours, I can do that.
Yeah, who knows whatever happened to that guy? I remember once that show Pawn Stars, where a guy brought in because they did find some of the money. Some of the money was recovered.
Yes.
It was all like in pieces and stuff. But a guy brought in a piece of one of the bills that and he had it certified and authenticated and all that shit, and he was trying to sell a piece of the DB Cooper money at the Pawn Stars.
Oh my God, I would have bought if I had stupid money, right, just money to spend on whatever. Oh, the dumb things I would buy. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah, I mean, same with me. If you could get that stuff, like, hey, see that spoon that I got sitting there on the shelf? That used to be Jeffrey Dahmer's spoon.
There's
like that,
in Las Vegas. There's Zach Bagans has a haunted museum, and he's got some rooms that have items from various serial killers, which I kind of want to check out.
Oh yeah, that'd be really interesting. You know, we
These
go
days.
take the tour and then afterwards do an audit. No.
Yeah. Where's Zach? Get him out here.
Oh, yeah. Who's it? Tom Hunter is saying, pick a California crime. I'll help.
Yes.
God, there's so many.
Golden State Killer. Is that the one?
Oh, yeah, the Golden State Killer?
Yeah, that was recent.
Sacramento.
I'm
there's
this close to seeing if I can get Gary Ridgway to agree to having a conversation with me. The jail he's at is like 3 hours away.
Oh yeah, I mean that. Where is he? Is he? You probably know this. Is he still housed at Walla Walla Prison? Or?
Yeah, I believe so. They moved him temporarily
Okay.
and then moved him back because he was upset that no one wanted to interact with him. Like, of course, no one wants to interact with you, dude. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm not entirely sure that's true, but.
Because wasn't he moved to the federal prison system for security reasons? Like, wasn't he sent to they sent him to USP Florence? And
something like that. I know they moved him, and then he's like, I don't like it here, and they moved him back or something like that. I don't remember all the details, unfortunately. But I intend to write to him. I just don't know what to say. Like, what do you write to a serial killer? Like, hey, good job. You were convicted of the most murders. Well done, you. Want to talk? Like, what? Is that what you say? I don't know.
Yeah, I've actually I've written to some. Maybe I could give you some advice on this.
Oh yeah.
But I've written to some people like I've written to some individuals on death row.
Oh.
I corresponded with. This is one that I actually went and met. I corresponded with a woman on death row here in California. Her name is she's still on death row. Veronica Gonzalez. She was from San Diego. She's the first married woman on death row in California because her husband was found guilty, of the same crime, and they both received a death sentence. So,
Sure.
So she was the first woman in state of California, the first married woman on death row. That's kind of like her claim, to fame or whatnot. But I went and visited her before. I actually got a picture with her. I'll have to share that with you. I'll email it to you.
Do it.
I corresponded with a few people. I corresponded with one guy who's not on death row anymore. He got his sentence commuted. But still,
still life in prison. So.
Yeah, but no, it's interesting. I'm sure some people are probably shaking their heads, going, "Oh, why the hell would you want to do that?" But it's, I don't know. I've always been, I've always been fascinated with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think not that I don't idolize them for their crimes or anything like that, but
it's just interesting, yeah. The mentality and the whole thing. Well, with that though, I probably should end the stream because I'm about to fall asleep, and I haven't eaten yet. Should.
Yeah, maybe the next live stream we do it, we can talk all things serial killers.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'd be down.
Yeah, let's do it again. Always a pleasure talking to you, and we'll do this again soon.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, thanks for having me, and as always,
Sure.
Stay handsome.
You know me, growing out this beard. How can I not? All right, see.
All right. Okay. Good night.
All right, good night. All right, yo, hooligans. It is 5:45 for you. It's a little later than that for me. I've been up late, or early. I started early. It's an early day for me. But hey, you guys have been amazing. For all those who donated, I realized that again. I didn't say thank you fully to Gresh, whatever. I thanked him through text, but I didn't say thank you. So personally, Gresh, we're just gonna call him Gresh because I forget the last part. Greshmock. Greshmock? I think that's right. I think that's how he wanted it pronounced. He, she, I don't know. Thank you. Amazing stuff. So sorry I forgot to say thank you the last time. And for those of you who called me out, that one person who did it, I say those of you as if there's more than one. It's only one. Thank you for calling me out. Keep me humble. That's important to me. What time zone am I in? That is a secret that I will be telling you, hopefully, we'll be finding out more about later. What? No what? No, Brenny, no what? What are you knowing? Geschmack. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. You're behind. All right. The chat is behind for me. There's like a 15-second delay. Are you saying it's Geschmack? Because the last stream, I think they specifically said it was Geschmack. I could be wrong. I don't remember. It's hard reading people's names. But you know who I'm talking about. So, yes, that was a fun stream. We talked about a lot of stuff. And we had a good time. And for those of you who donated, oh my God, you've been incredibly generous. And now I have more funds to build the most amazing studio ever, which is, it's going to, if it works, I got big plans. I got software to implement, it's the buttons to press. Man, that was a fun stream. So for those of you who donated, you've been incredibly generous. Oh my God, so generous. Thank you so much. If you didn't donate, I still appreciate you. Again, I have my my Etsy store, which I'm trying to post and it won't let me. If you want to support the channel, that's a great way to do it because you actually get something out of it. You know, I always kind of feel bad for people just donating because, like, what do you get? Like, I'm not going to stop you, but what are you getting out of it? I feel like, you know, I should be providing something. And last time I said this, someone was like, you provide entertainment. But, okay, cool. Or I can provide t-shirts. So if you want to support this channel and you want a t-shirt, that's a great way to do it. If you don't, if you just want to look at it and go, oh, those are kind of nice, but I don't need one, that's fine too. That's totally cool. I'm okay with that. I got a Patreon as well. If you want to see the upcoming merchandise before it's out, that's a great place to see it. Sometimes I put my scripts when I have scripts up, unless I'm like making the video very quickly. If I've written a script, I haven't made the video yet, I'll often put the script up before the video comes out so you sort of know what's about to happen. What does YouTube rake off the top? We send you cash. I actually don't know. Can't be much or else I'd know it. How much does YouTube take from Super Chats? Apparently 30%. Wow. I did not know that. Okay, that's a thing. That's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. It's fine. Yeah. So, if you're cool with YouTube doing that, hey, that's how it works. I'm always excited for the donations, and you guys are incredible. And if YouTube wants the 30%, they can get the 30%. If you want to donate in a different way, again, there's the merch shop, there's the Patreon. You still get stuff out of that, and the merch shop, they still take some, but not much. If you don't include the cost of, you know, the actual material. But maybe someday I'll put up the PayPal link. I kind of feel, I don't know how I feel about it. It just feels greedy to put up PayPal. Not that you shouldn't, if that's your thing. If you're an auditor, I know there are a lot of them that do that. I just feel kind of weird about it because I'm not doing this for money. Like, this isn't my job. I have a job. That's why I'm in a hotel right now. Now, I do this for fun. I really enjoy discussing law and law enforcement and these various things. And it's nice to have a little bit of extra income to support this whole project, right? Like when I was doing the Green River Killer stuff, some people donated so I could get a metal detector. Well, that's amazing. Now I can get a metal detector, you know? Trying to find people. But anyway, that's enough ranting about finances and whatever. Thank you everyone so much for showing up. I had a lovely time. You guys are great. And yeah, until the next time, be good, stay safe.